Chapter 3265. Ning Shu stood in a hidden place and looked at Wang Tiandong's terrified and desperate look. He walked with one foot deep and the other shallow. He didn't even know if he bumped into someone. He looked like he was about to cry. His face was pale and he was terrified and helpless. His hands were trembling. Ning Shu just looked at him indifferently. He let the pet get used to being owned by the owner and then heartlessly abandoned the pet. How desperate and scared the pet must be now. Ning Shu was now a bad owner. Ning Shu found a small hotel to stay in. It was the kind that was more hidden. After all, a bigger hotel required an ID card. She didn't have one now. She secretly observed Wang Tiandong. During this time, Wang Tiandong had been looking for someone. He couldn't eat or sleep. Since he was worried that what he had done would be exposed, he hoped that the woman would come back with the child like before. He waited anxiously, as if he was waiting for a judge. Where did they go? Wang Tiandong didn't go to class. He looked everywhere every day and expanded the search area. But the mother and daughter seemed to have evaporated from the world. They disappeared silently. Liar, big liar. And Wang Tiandong didn't believe that she would abandon the feelings between them. Could it be that their previous interactions were all fake? For a period of time, Wang Tiandong was skinny. His cheekbones were raised and his eyes were red. Anyone who saw Wang Tiandong in this state would think that Wang Tiandong's mental state was not good. Moreover, he looked at people with a crazy energy. The school leaders saw Wang Tiandong like this and temporarily stopped him from driving. If anything happened to him while driving, it was related to the safety of the students. However, seeing that Wang Tiandong had been driving for the school for so many years and nothing had happened during that time, Wang Tiandong had always been reliable. The school's leaders also asked Wang Tiandong to rest and come back to class when his body was better. But now Wang Tiandong's mental state was not good. When he heard that the school leaders had the intention to expel him, he immediately became irritable. He looked quite crazy. For Wang Tiandong, it was like he was cheated and abandoned. Now these people were going to expel him. One by one, they were going to abandon him. For Wang Tiandong, the actions of the school leaders were the last straw that broke his back. He hysterically argued with the school. What right do you have to expel me? What if something happens to me while I'm driving? You're all liars, lying to me one by one. The whole world wanted to abandon him. They had agreed to spend the rest of their lives together. He had driven for the school for so many years. He had always been a cautious driver. He would rather slow down than exceed the speed limit. Obey the traffic rules. However, these people insisted on giving him another blow when he was at his lowest point, when he was in pain. The school leaders were speechless. What was wrong with him? Seeing that you're not in good spirits and in a daze, it's wrong to let you rest. Seeing Wang Tiandong like this, the school leaders felt even more uneasy. If something really happened to him while he was driving, the school would have to face a torrent of questions and accusations from the parents. The school leaders decided to let Wang Tiandong rest for a period of time. As for whether he could still come to class in the future, it would depend on his condition. In fact, this was more or less the same as being fired. Anyone with a bit of self-respect would just walk away. Wang Tiandong was now like a spring. The heavier the pressure, the greater the rebound. In such a situation, of course, he would kick up a fuss and do his best. The school leaders were having a headache because of Wang Tiandong. He was just a school bus driver. He was not a teacher of the school. Although he could not be fired directly, he could be transferred. How could he be put in a spot by a school bus driver? They immediately decided to fire him. They would not give Wang Tiandong any chance. Letting such a paranoid lunatic drive the school bus, who knew when he would do something harmful to the children? Wang Tiandong's job was gone. His mental support had collapsed. Now, even his psychological support had collapsed. The whole world was leaving her. He put up small advertisements every day. They were all missing people notices and looking for people. When people familiar with him asked, he would lie and say that he was a relative. Because the mother and daughter had gone missing, he was now helping to look for them. If anyone saw them, they should inform him immediately. Now, Wang Tiandong could lie without batting an eye. No one would have thought that Wang Tiandong had imprisoned a girl for so many years. Moreover, Wang Tiandong was usually an honest person. When he said that, others believed him. It had been a few days since Ning Shu left. During this time, Ning Shu did not appear once. He was secretly observing. Looking at Wang Tiandong's terrified and desperate face, there was resentment and hatred, but more than that, there was desire. If Ning Shu appeared in front of Wang Tiandong now, Wang Tiandong would definitely be ecstatic. He would definitely not care about it. If he did anything, he would not dare to go overboard. Ning Shu would not appear in front of Wang Tiandong. He would let him find him first and wait in fear and despair. He did not know when the police would come. He would scare himself. A sword was hanging on his neck. He did not know when it would fall. The feeling of waiting for death was not good. He was waiting for someone to appear. He was getting more and more desperate. After despair, he would be lucky. Maybe he would be relieved. At that time, Ning Shu would go and make his presence known. One had to let one's heart be in a state of anxiety and despair at all times. Shrouded in despair and hopelessness. Losing and gaining repeatedly was enough to torture a person's heart. Because he did not have an ID card, Ning Shu could not find a job. He could only find a small restaurant to be a dishwasher. It was also temporary. He just needed to earn enough money to live in a hotel and make a living. He did not expect to make any big money. In this world, he ate one meal at a time. After leaving, this body died. And he had to die a little more vigorously. He had to use death to achieve some goals. Occasionally, he would secretly observe. Wang Tiandong's missing person notice only described his appearance, holding a child. There was not even a photo. He was probably afraid that a photo would cause trouble. However, the sender did not have a photo. After so many years in the basement, he had not taken a photo. It was impossible to find him with this missing person notice. Around the neighborhood, he used his spiritual force to scan and found that Wang Tiandong slept in the basement every day, crying while holding the quilt. He looked so pitiful and desperate. The despair of being abandoned. Wang Tiandong's feelings for Ning Shu were not love, but the kind of fantasy. It was a psychological cue planted by Ning Shu. Now Wang Tiandong's pain was because his illusion was shattered. How beautiful he thought at the beginning, how cruel the reality was. If he did not have it, it would be fine. If he had it, even if it was fake, it was real for Wang Tiandong. Now that he had lost it, it was as painful as digging out the flesh of his body and removing the bone and flesh. It was forcefully peeled off. /BK Chapter 3266. After more than a month, Ning Shu didn't appear, and no police came. Gradually, Wang Tiandong gave up. If she really called the police, then the police would definitely come early in the morning. But a month had passed, and there was no news. No news was good news. Something must have happened. Maybe it was. Maybe she didn't dare to call the police and didn't want this matter to be exposed. She said that she didn't want to embarrass herself. Wang Tiandong even sneaked near the client's house and observed the client's family to make sure that they didn't go back. Wang Tiandong was at a loss. He didn't know how to live. He didn't have a wife or a child. They all disappeared. He was in pain. He was betrayed and deceived. They said that they would live together. Ning Shu followed behind. When he saw that Wang Tiandong actually went to the client's house, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes to hide the emotions in them. Wang Tiandong couldn't be left alive. He might even bring disaster to the client's family. Her family didn't know that such a person was secretly watching them. Maybe Wang Tiandong would have the guts to do something evil and do something to destroy the family. This kind of thing wasn't unheard of. There was a man who killed his father-in-law's family because of a divorce, just because his father-in-law's family agreed to the divorce. The man felt that it was his father-in-law's family who separated him and his wife, so he wanted to take revenge. He was very vengeful. Now that Wang Tiandong was suffering from the pain of being deceived and seemed to have been expelled from the school, a little provocation might cause the spark to burn into a big fire. Moreover, Wang Tiandong actually knew the client's home address. This was a very dangerous thing. Therefore, Ning Shu didn't plan to delay any longer. Ning Shu followed behind Wang Tiandong. When Wang Tiandong opened the door, Ning Shu stretched out his leg and kicked Wang Tiandong's calf. Wang Tiandong turned around. When he saw Ning Shu, he had a look of realization on his face. His expression was one of disbelief. He probably thought that he was dreaming. Ning Shu walked into the room. Wang Tiandong hurriedly entered the room and pinched his thigh. Instantly, the pain spread out. In order to prove that he wasn't dreaming, he used a lot of force. It was not a dream. Wang Tiandong's heart was filled with great surprise, followed by monstrous anger. He roared at Ning Shu, "Where have you been? Do you know that I have been looking for you?" Ning Shu nodded indifferently. "Of course I know you're looking for me." Wang Tiandong suddenly held his breath. He couldn't breathe and his face turned green. You, Wang Tiandong asked excitedly, but in the end, the other party didn't know his mistake at all. He acted as if it was only natural for him to do so. This made Wang Tiandong so angry that his liver hurt. "Where's the child?" "The child?" Wang Tiandong realized that something was missing. It turned out that the woman was not holding the child. Ning Shu spread his hands and said, "I left the child to someone else. You don't have to worry." Wang Tiandong was about to explode. He roared, "Who are you going to hand her over to?" "That's my child." "What right do you have to hand her over to someone else?" That was the child that he had taken care of with all his might. He had taken care of the child's food, drink, and defecate. He had taken care of the child until the child could babble now. Hand it over to someone else. Wang Tiandong was flustered and exasperated. During this time, his worry, fear, and despair turned into anger. He picked up the chair next to him and threw it at Ning Shu. "Bitch will always be a bitch. You're such an ungrateful wretch. I'm going to kill you." Wang Tiandong lifted the chair and threw it at Ning Shu. In fact, he was relieved that she was back. It was just that the worry and fear from before had now turned into anger. It was like a parent hitting a child because of fear. Ning Shu would not let Wang Tiandong hit him now. "Don't even think about touching him." She avoided the chair and directly stunned Wang Tiandong with her spiritual power. Wang Tiandong felt a sharp pain in his head and then he lost consciousness. With a thud, the chair fell to the ground. Fortunately, this was the first floor. Even if there was any noise, people downstairs could not hear it. Ning Shu stretched out his foot and kicked Wang Tiandong. Wang Tiandong was like a dead dog and did not respond at all. Ning Shu dragged Wang Tiandong to the basement, opened the chain, and directly buckled Wang Tiandong's ankle. Wang Tiandong had detained the client like this before, and now he was detained like this. So that Wang Tiandong would not monitor the client's family every day. And the client's family did not know anything. They did not know that such a dangerous person was watching their home. Since Wang Tiandong liked the basement so much, he could stay in the basement until he died. Ning Shu went out of the basement and cooked a lot of delicious food for himself. After eating, he pulled a chair to the basement and sat down to wait for Wang Tiandong to wake up. Wang Tiandong was in a coma for half a day. When he woke up, his head was very painful. He rubbed his head and sat up. The light in the basement was dim. Wang Tiandong saw Ning Shu sitting by the bed. He was still in a daze and did not know what was going on. He moved his body, and the chain on his feet made a clanking sound. Wang Tiandong was stunned for a moment. He grabbed the chain and quivered. It seemed that his soul had returned to his body. "What are you doing? Why did you lock me up?" Wang Tiandong rubbed the key on his body. Ning Shu took out the key. "It's with me." Wang Tiandong stretched out his hand to grab the key. Ning Shu avoided his hand and said, "You seem to like the basement very much. Then I will fulfill your wish." Wang Tiandong was shocked and angry. Ning Shu shouted, "What are you doing? Hurry up and let me go." Wang Tiandong was a little desperate. In order to prevent her from escaping, he made this kind of chain. It was inlaid on the wall and cast with cement. It was impossible to break the chain with human strength. "What do you want to do?" Wang Tiandong looked at Ning Shu. "Don't I treat you well? I do everything according to you. How can you treat me like this?" Ning Shu was speechless. It seemed that Wang Tiandong was very wronged. And he was really wronged. Betrayal and humiliation filled his eyes. Wronged? What was there to feel wronged about? He did not care about her wishes and forcefully imprisoned her here. He even violated her. If you feel wronged, wouldn't others feel wronged too? Ning Shu put the key ring on his finger and spun it. "You want the key? Come and get it. Why are you doing this to me? I hate you. I treat you so well, but what about you?" Ning Shu smiled and said, "It's okay. I will return the kindness you treat me well. You locked me up in the basement with my ankles cuffed. I will do the same to you. I'll return all the kindness you've shown me. Please look forward to it." Ning Shu smiled and winked at Wang Tiandong. She gave off a charming and naughty feeling. Chapter 3267. She had the playfulness and cuteness that a girl should have. Any man would like a woman to smile at him like that. It was very charming and cute, as if she was acting coquettishly. But Wang Tiandong was not in the mood to appreciate this at all. A woman who tied him up and locked him up, and then smiled at him coquettishly. It really made people feel a chill down their spine and numb all over their body. Wang Tiandong dragged the chain and wanted to snatch the key in Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu held the rotating key in his palm and avoided Wang Tiandong. Because of the chain, Wang Tiandong could only move within a certain range. He could not reach Ning Shu at all. He could only bare his fangs and brandish his claws, but he could not get close to Ning Shu at all. Ning Shu put the key away and said to Wang Tiandong, "Be good and wait for me to bring you some food to eat." "What do you want to eat?" Wang Tiandong was not in the mood to eat. Although he was angry, his tone was pleading. "If you want to let me go, let's talk about it." The feeling of being tied up was not good. Although he locked her up, he tried to satisfy her in other aspects. What else was she not satisfied with? What did she mean now? Was she taking revenge on him? Ning Shu said, "Don't worry, I will take good care of you. I will try my best to satisfy you." "Wang Tiandong, I know you are angry that I tied you up, but you promised me that you would live well and take the child back. Let's let this matter pass, okay? I will make it up to you." Wang Tiandong's head was throbbing, and his blood vessels seemed to be about to explode. Ning Shu shook his head and said, "I won't be angry. I will only torture you to death." Wang Tiandong was happy. "It's good that you are not angry. Let me go." Ning Shu felt that Wang Tiandong's brain had been kicked by a donkey. You think that it is not good to stay in the basement, but others have stayed there for many years and suffered. When others were locked up, they felt that the basement was nothing. But when you were locked up, you wanted to be released. Dream on. Ning Shu said, since you feel that it is not a problem to live in the basement, then live here. I will take good care of you. Ning Shu turned around and went out of the basement. He locked the door, isolating Wang Tiandong's roar from the inside. After that, Ning Shu gave Wang Tiandong leftovers every day. They were all leftover soup and water. They were all mixed into a bowl and were carried to the basement. Ning Shu put the sloppy-looking food in front of Wang Tiandong and said, "Eat." Wang Tiandong looked at the hogwash and asked, "You're giving me this?" Ning Shu said, "Only this. Otherwise, you won't even be able to eat this in the future. I'm not very good at cooking." Wang Tiandong looked at the food and couldn't swallow it. He tried to curry favor with Ning Shu and said, "Why don't you let me go? I'll cook for you." Ning Shu rested her chin on her hand and smiled sweetly. "If I let you go, I'll be the one locked up in the basement." "No, no, as long as you don't leave here, you don't have to live in the basement." Wang Tiandong just wanted to untie the chains on his feet. The chains rubbed against his skin until it was red and painful. And during the time she left, she didn't call the police or go home, which meant that she wouldn't call the police. In fact, she cared about him in her heart, but she was too angry about what happened before. Wang Tiandong's heart relaxed a little. "I know you're angry. I'll definitely treat you well in the future. Really, I swear." "Ning Shu, you're dead." "Ning Shu, okay, stay here." He thought she was angry and joking. He would know in the future if she was joking. Wang Tiandong was very satisfied. He thought that Ning Shu would let him go after a while, but she didn't. He ate leftovers every day. Sometimes it was a little rancid. He applied to change it to something more fragrant, but the application was invalid. Eat it or not. If not, forget it. Wang Tiandong had no choice. He was so hungry that he could only eat. After eating, his stomach felt uncomfortable, and then the whole basement smelled bad. The basement, which was considered clean before, was now dirty and smelly. The bed sheets hadn't been changed for a long time, and the floor wasn't sprinkled with lime. The bedding became a little wet, and Wang Tiandong didn't take a shower, so the bedding became a little black. Wang Tiandong applied to change the bedding, and then poured out the dirty things in the toilet bowl. It was too smelly, too suffocating. But Ning Shu didn't approve, and let the basement become a dirty place. Wang Tiandong was unkempt, like a beggar in a garbage dump. It was unbearably smelly. After a long time, Wang Tiandong gradually realized that the other party wasn't lying. She let him rot in the basement. She didn't feel sorry for him at all. She smiled coquettishly, and her smile made people shiver. She wanted to take revenge on him. Wang Tiandong scolded Ning Shu, and then begged him. He was in the same state as the previous client. He looked at Ning Shu with eyes full of fear and hatred. Ning Shu wore a mask and looked at Wang Tiandong indifferently. He turned a deaf ear to Wang Tiandong's words. Wang Tiandong knelt down with a plop. His ankles had been worn by the chain, and scabbed over and over again. His ankles were always bleeding. "Can you let me out? I was wrong. I will treat you well in the future, and I won't lock you in the basement anymore." Wang Tiandong really couldn't stand such days. There was no light and the stench filled the air. He ate pig food, and wished he could die. Ning Shu chuckled. How long had it been, and he couldn't stand it anymore. It hadn't even been half a year. The client had been suffering for more than 10 years. Before Ning Shu came, she had also endured 5 or 6 years of such suffering. Ning Shu's voice carried a smile, "Don't be like this. How long has it been? When the time is up, I will definitely let you out. Wang Tiandong was in despair. His voice was bitter, then when can you let me out? After making a fuss, scolding, and sometimes fighting, he was beaten even worse. It was hard to imagine that a woman could have so much strength to beat a man like him until he cried out in pain. So now, Wang Tiandong didn't dare to fight with Ning Shu at all. Sometimes, he hoped that Ning Shu would beat him up badly. Just like in the past, everything would be fine after a beating, and the matter would be resolved. But now, she wouldn't fight back unless he fought back. If she could beat him hysterically and scold him, there might be hope. But she was always smiling, looking especially youthful and beautiful. But the more she was like this, the more Wang Tiandong felt uncertain and afraid. He was worried that he would be locked in the basement forever. He begged, I still have to go to work. Can you let me out? Without money, how are we going to live? Ning Shu, weren't you fired? Why are you still working? Chapter 3268. You're going to be expelled. You're not being honest. Wang Tiandong was speechless. He really had no other way. She was stubborn. He was so good to her. Wang Tiandong was in deep despair. He didn't know what to do. In the end, Wang Tiandong looked at Ning Shu with a blank face. His eyes were full of despair. Ning Shu felt that he had stayed in this world for long enough. It was time to leave. Wang Tiandong didn't have a human shape now. He was skinny and the basement smelled so bad that it was suffocating. Wang Tiandong lived like an animal. The hope in his heart was gradually obliterated, bit by bit. This person left and appeared and left again, torturing Wang Tiandong's heart to pieces. He wanted to die but didn't dare to. He just endured it. Ning Shu walked in front of Wang Tiandong and looked at him. Wang Tiandong's leg was infected. Because the basement was dirty and damp, the wound was infected. Wang Tiandong always tried to struggle. Regardless, the wound was always infected. His whole leg was swollen and flowing with pus. It emitted a stench, which made the basement smell even more suffocating. Wang Tiandong's face was dark and covered with a layer of dust. He raised his eyes and looked at Ning Shu. His eyes were bloodshot. His eyeballs were chapped and full of cracks. He said in a hoarse voice, "How are you going to torture me?" Ning Shu shook his head and said, "No, this time you are really free." He raised his head abruptly, and his stiff neck made a cracking sound. His heart, which had been dead silent, suddenly started to beat. "You are going to let me go?" There was no hope, but the woman suddenly said that she was going to let him go. It gave Wang Tiandong hope. Ning Shu took out the key and threw it in the corner. It was a distance that Wang Tiandong couldn't reach. Wang Tiandong looked at Ning Shu in shock. He couldn't help but ask, "What are you going to do?" Ning Shu shrugged and said, "I said, you are free. I threw the key over there. You won't be able to reach it unless you chop off your own leg to break free from the chains." Wang Tiandong's heart was numb. He knew it would be like this. What freedom? It was clearly torture. Cutting off one's own leg. Although the leg was injured now, no one could calmly cut off their own limbs. Even if they didn't have money, they still had to cherish their limbs and facial features. Wang Tiandong looked at the key lying quietly on the ground. At this distance, it was simply impossible to reach it. He could only look at the key, but he couldn't get it. This person was truly vicious, and extremely cruel. If he wanted to leave, he would have to chop off his own leg. How was he supposed to choose? "You will die a horrible death." Ning Shu said, "I won't die." Even if his will was gone, he could still be reborn and start anew. It was equivalent to him being able to reincarnate indefinitely. "No, I won't die. I'm going to die right in front of you." Ning Shu spoke of death casually, as if it was a game. Either she was crazy, or he was crazy. Ning Shu said again, "That's right. If I die, no one will send you food. You will starve to death in the basement. But there's still another kind of food." Wang Tiandong blankly moved his eyeballs, indicating that he was listening. Ning Shu smiled brightly, "That is, my corpse." Hee hee. Wang Tiandong's pupils shrunk. He was probably frightened by Ning Shu's madness. If you chop off your own leg and get the key, you can open the chains. If you can't bear to part with your leg, then you can only be chained and eat my corpse to survive. But sooner or later, you will finish eating my corpse. After eating my corpse, you will chop off my leg. Wouldn't that be a loss? These words were really challenging Wang Tiandong's psychological endurance. He never knew that this woman was so perverted. Yes, she was perverted. How could she be so perverted as to say such words casually? This made Wang Tiandong's heart very afraid. Wang Tiandong said in despair, "Can you stop messing around?" Moreover, Wang Tiandong did not believe that she would really die like this. He could not even bear to part with his leg. He did not believe that she would be willing to part with her life. Ning Shu curiously asked, "What's your choice? Am I going to starve to death or chop off my leg?" Wang Tiandong was somewhat frightened. He looked at this girl. Her charming face was filled with curiosity. She was like a naive girl, curiously looking at him. Waiting for his answer. If it was an ordinary matter, then it would be fine. But it had to be this kind of question. So perverted. Ning Shu saw that Wang Tiandong did not speak. "Well, this is a very difficult choice. In order for you to be able to eat my corpse, I have to be closer to death. My corpse won't be able to be eaten for long. It will be hard in a day. In 4 or 5 days, it will start to rot. You have to think carefully. Good luck." Ning Shu laughed at Wang Tiandong. The laughter made Wang Tiandong feel uncomfortable. He wanted to see how she would die. Ning Shu said to the system, "You can leave the world now." The system said, "The client is not satisfied. Don't worry, there's still more. The things after I leave are more interesting." Ning Shu said. The system thought for a moment and said, "If you come back now, you might have less soul power." Ning Shu said, "It's okay. I'll leave now." The system took away Ning Shu's soul. Without the support of the soul, the body softly fell to the ground. Wang Tiandong was shocked. She fainted for no reason. He touched her body. It was warm. He checked her breath. There was no breath. Wang Tiandong did not dare to believe. How could a person suddenly die? She died just like that. He kept his finger under the corpse's nose for a long time. A normal person could not breathe for so long. Moreover, her body was slowly cooling down. Wang Tiandong curled up in the corner and stared at the corpse in horror. She was dead. She was dead. Wang Tiandong cried and laughed. He did not feel relaxed at all. Logically speaking, this woman tortured him like this. He should be happy that she was dead. However, Wang Tiandong was in so much pain and despair that his whole body trembled. He bit his hand and whimpered. Being in the same room with a corpse was too horrifying. Even if this woman was with him day and night, disappointment was something that all living things feared. 1 day, 2 days. Wang Tiandong looked at the motionless corpse. She was really dead. Unbelievable. It must be fake. How could a person be dead just like that? Wang Tiandong was dizzy from hunger. He had not eaten for 2 days. There was nothing to eat in the basement. There was not even a sip of water. But there was dirty water in the toilet. The only food left was this corpse. Chapter 3269. Wang Tiandong was so hungry that he was dizzy. He hadn't eaten for 2 days. His mouth was dry and his body was weak. He didn't even have any leftovers to eat. He tried his best to open his eyes. What he saw was a corpse. In the past 2 days, the body hadn't moved at all. Its posture hadn't changed at all. The skin began to turn gray. A pair of eyes stared at him. The corner of the mouth had a faint smile. As time passed, the body began to stiffen. The smile on the face became even more strange. After the body stiffened, it would slowly soften and then start to rot. Wang Tiandong was so hungry. This was the only thing he could eat. Did he really have to eat it? Just living with a body day and night was scary enough. If he really had to eat it now, he couldn't. It was too challenging. Wang Tiandong's psychological bottom line. The same kind of body. But if he didn't eat it, he could only starve to death. But there was another way. He could cut off his own leg, unlock the chains, and get the key to leave. How to choose? Wang Tiandong felt like he was going crazy. She was really a pervert. She came up with such a vicious idea. Whether it was losing a leg or eating the body in front of him, it was equally hard to accept. Wang Tiandong wanted to kill himself, but he didn't have any courage to do so. The hunger in his stomach made him want to eat everything that could be eaten. The wriggling in his stomach made his empty stomach ache. Despair, it was really despair. Now, Wang Tiandong had a taste of what it felt like to be locked up and tortured day after day. Wang Tiandong understood more and more that she wouldn't forgive him. Because he had encountered these things, he had already cut her into pieces in his heart. What to do, what to do? Eat or cut off his own leg. In ancient times, people would exchange children for food. It was normal for him to eat. When people were hungry, they could do anything. Wang Tiandong slowly crawled over and touched the body lying on the ground. The body was cold. It seemed like a chill was transmitted through his fingertips to the body. It made Wang Tiandong shiver. He was very hungry, but he didn't know where to start. No one would come to save him. If he hadn't been expelled, the school would be suspicious if he didn't go to class. But now he had been expelled. Because Wang Tiandong was an honest man, he didn't have much contact with the people around him. Especially during the years when he imprisoned the client, he didn't have much contact with others. She never brought anyone to her house, for fear that someone would discover something. He had no friends, and his family was no longer around. All of these had become his death sentence. Wang Tiandong grabbed his fingers. The lower part of his body was easier to attack. The blood in his body should have started to rot by now. But now, Wang Tiandong couldn't care less. He was too hungry and bit his finger. A putrid smell of blood permeated the air. Wang Tiandong couldn't eat anymore and spat it out. If he ate this, he wouldn't be far from death. Wang Tiandong looked at her swollen leg. The pain in her leg had been tormenting her. If he really broke his leg and got the key to get out, he might be saved. However, to forcibly break his own leg, how much courage did it require? It was no less than eating the corpse in front of him. Wang Tiandong picked up the knife. She had left this for him in advance. She was afraid that he didn't have the tools, so she prepared it for him. She also said that he could use this to chop up the body and eat it. The more Wang Tiandong thought about it, the more disgusted he felt. He spat out yellow water and finally blood. He raised the knife and slashed at his ankle with his eyes closed. When he slashed, he couldn't cut it off. After a few more slashes, the wound was messy. One of his legs had been separated from his body, and the chain had also been broken. Wang Tiandong was in so much pain that he almost fainted. His whole body was drenched in cold sweat and his eyes were bloodshot. He endured the pain and crawled toward the key. Blood gushed out of the wound and he fainted. Wang Tiandong felt very cold. As the blood left his body, he became hungrier and colder. His mind became more and more fuzzy. He felt the key and was overjoyed. He could finally get out. He climbed up the stairs and felt for the key on the wooden board. He tried a few times but couldn't insert the key into the keyhole. Wang Tiandong shook his head and tried a few times before he could insert the key. He twisted it with all his strength but found that it wouldn't budge at all. It wouldn't budge. The key was wrong. This wasn't the key to unlock the door. He had been deceived. He had mustered up a lot of courage and cut off his leg. However, he didn't expect that the key was wrong. He had lost his leg and couldn't go out. Wang Tiandong shouted with all his strength, "You lied to me. You lied to me." Wang Tiandong's body erupted with a huge amount of strength. He crawled to the side of the corpse. He raised the knife and madly slashed at the motionless corpse. "Bitch, bitch. I was so good to you. Why did you play with me like this? Bitch, bitch." Wang Tiandong angrily cursed as he crazily slashed. Blood splashed out. But his body didn't feel anything. Wang Tiandong was tired. Gradually, despair and unwillingness took over his heart. His heart's hope was broken again and again. Time and time again, he paid with his leg. But this woman lied to him. Now, she deliberately died in front of him. His last hope was gone. He was going to starve to death in the basement. Even if he didn't starve to death, the blood from the wound was enough to make his situation worse. Originally, his leg was infected. Now that he had cut off his leg, it accelerated the infection. From the beginning to the end, that woman didn't want to let him out. He had been so good to her. What deep hatred could she not let go of? Even if she had been imprisoned by him for so many years, he had never treated her in such a fierce way. He had never forced her to stomp her foot, never refused to give her food, and never died in front of her and gave her the wrong key. This woman was too vicious. Too perverted. How could a person be so perverted? Was she not afraid of death? Wang Tiandong felt that his blood was about to run out. At this moment, he didn't feel hungry. His whole body was warm. He knew that this was the final radiance of the setting sun. Soon, he would die. Wang Tiandong cried and fell beside the unrecognizable corpse. "Why did you do this to me? I will be very good to you. I'm sorry, but I'm already trying my best to make up for it. Couldn't they live a good life? Child. Right, where was the child? He couldn't see the child anymore. Soft body, pure smile. That was the child he took care of wholeheartedly. This woman was too vicious. She had broken something that was originally beautiful and fragmented it into pieces. Why did he have to use such an extreme method to destroy something beautiful? /BK Chapter 3271. Moreover, earthworms instinctively yearned for things because they needed them. The earthworm coughed and said proudly, "All right then." Zhu Jun said, "Can it do it? It's so small." The earthworm was unhappy. "Why can't I? I can also become very big." Ning Shu nodded. Yes, it can transform. When he first met the earthworm, its body was very big. Later on, it had always been small. Zhu Jun was speechless. "All right, you guys win." Ning Shu threw the merit grain to the earthworm. It jumped up and bit the merit grain with its mouth and swallowed it. However, the merit grain was not easy to digest. Ning Shu said to Zhu Jun, "Tell it how to take care of the child later." Zhu Jun was speechless. He really couldn't imagine letting a loach take care of a human child. Could it really take care of it? However, Zhu Jun didn't raise any more questions. Since there was someone who could take care of the child, he was relieved. Not long after taking care of the child, Zhu Jun already felt terrible. He cried when something happened and when nothing happened. He cried until he grew up. Zhu Jun would rather go fight than take care of the child. Now that someone was taking over, Zhu Jun explained in detail how to take care of the baby, whether it was cold or hot, hungry or pooping. These were all experiences that Zhu Jun summarized after being tortured. When the earthworm heard that torture was troublesome, it immediately wanted to go back on its word. It wasn't so troublesome when it took care of Liren in the past. The earthworm said, "It's so troublesome. Forget it, I'll give up." Ning Shu stretched out his hand. "Return the merit grain to me." The earthworm went back on its word. "It's already in my stomach. It's mine. Do you really want me to spit it out? It's very disgusting." Ning Shu said, "I can even pick up money in the toilet. What's the point of pulling out the merit grain from your vomit?" The earthworm said. "You're so disgusting." All right, I'll take care of it." The earthworm expanded its body into the shape of a big snake and began to practice doing things with its flexible tail. It boiled water, made milk powder, wrapped the milk bottle with its tail and shook it vigorously. It also used its tail to change the child's diapers. In the beginning, it was very clumsy. Ning Shu planned to stay and take care of the child for a while. After all, he had taken 10% of the child's mother's soul power. Ning Shu would occasionally wander into more modern societies to get some milk powder and diapers for the children. When Earthworm was able to take care of the child alone, Ning Shu left. He would come to see the child when he was free. Ning Shu felt that Earthworm was gifted in taking care of children. Now, she was very familiar with it. She could even use her tail to sway the child and coax her to sleep with a snort. Well, at the beginning, the Earthworm refused to take care of the two-legged monster's baby, but now it doesn't matter. His mouth said no, but his body was honest. When the child cried, he immediately crawled over and rocked the stroller. The system's voice rang out, "The main system now requests you to go over and process the star rock." Ning Shu nodded. "All right, I got it." Back then, there was an agreement that the star stones still had to be dealt with. Moreover, if they did it, they would be paid 20% more. Ning Shu built a space channel and went to the place where the plane was broken. There were many fragments floating in the air. Granduncle was dealing with the fragments. When he saw Ning Shu coming, he directly threw the item to Ning Shu. Ning Shu took the item and began to process the star stones. He asked Granduncle, "Who will take over later?" Granduncle said lightly, "Someone will take over." Ning Shu rolled his eyes. "The city is full of tricks. I want to go back to the countryside." Granduncle said, "The countryside doesn't want dogs. Please go back." Ning Shu rolled his eyes so hard that his eyeballs couldn't be seen. After Ning Shu took over, Granduncle left again. He was probably busy with something again. Ning Shu felt that many people were staring at him while he was processing the star stones. There was the Great Gate Planet. Seeing the Great Gate Planet, the corners of Ning Shu's mouth curled up. He sped up processing the star stones. After a while, the star stones were all processed. Then Ning Shu walked toward the Great Gate Planet. The Great Gate Planet looked at Ning Shu without any change in expression. Before Ning Shu could speak, the system's voice sounded. "Calm down. Don't cause trouble in front of so many people." Ning Shu was speechless. Therefore, the system had actually given her a golden hoop spell, which she would recite whenever she was free. Ning Shu said, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just here to say hello." However, the system didn't believe a word of Ning Shu's words. From this mission, the system had more or less understood the character of this mission enforcer. He would seek revenge for the smallest grievance and his methods were special, so when the system saw Ning Shu like this, it immediately reminded him. "Don't cause trouble in front of so many people." Ning Shu said helplessly, "I really won't cause trouble." As she spoke, she took out the holy whip. The system asked, "Then why are you taking out the whip?" Ning Shu said, "I'm just showing off my whip." They didn't want the whip. Now that the whip was in her hands, how uncomfortable would they feel? The system was speechless. What was this unsettling trick for? If others saw the whip, they would think that she was provoking them. The Great Gate Planet was on guard when he saw Ning Shu take out the whip. Ning Shu looked at the Great Gate Planet and asked, "Do you think my whip looks good?" The Great Gate Planet was speechless. What the hell? The Great Gate Planet hadn't expected to meet Ning Shu here. Hadn't she heard that he had left the organization? Why was he here now? However, it was good that he was in the organization. After leaving the organization, he didn't know where to look. He focused on the holy whip. He wasn't afraid that she would cause trouble. If she did, it would be best if he could get the holy whip. Ning Shu said, "I'm asking you. Does my whip look good?" The Great Gate Planet didn't know what Ning Shu meant and didn't say anything. Ning Shu said, "I'm asking you. Does my whip look good?" The Great Gate Planet was speechless. Ning Shu said, "Are you looking down on me? I'm asking you sincerely, but you don't say a word. What do you mean?" The Great Gate Planet said casually, "It looks good." Ning Shu nodded. "I think it looks good too." She kept waving the whip in front of the Great Gate Planet. When the others saw Ning Shu holding the whip, it seemed like a conflict was about to break out. They all stopped what they were doing and looked at Ning Shu and the Great Gate Star. Ning Shu said, "Don't worry about us. Hurry up and work. We're waiting to connect to the plane. I'm chatting with the Great Gate Planet." Although the bosses around them were nice, they couldn't stop what they were doing. After all, there were many broken planes waiting to be dealt with. They didn't have much time to waste. The Great Gate Planet looked at Ning Shu coldly and said in a low voice, "What do you want?" Ning Shu said, "I want to chat with you about the whip/BK. Chapter 3272. Talk about the whip. This guy was doing it on purpose. The Great Gate Star was not afraid of Ning Shu knowing about it. The Great Gate Star looked at Ning Shu and said, "Okay, then let's talk about the holy whip." Ning Shu said, "Then I'll ask you sincerely. What is the holy whip? Why do you want it so badly? The more you want it, the more you won't give it." The Great Gate Star said, "This is a primitive treasure in the void. As time goes by, this kind of treasure will continue to grow and grow consciousness. So, if you feel that it's too hot to hold, then hand it over. This kind of thing shouldn't be held by you." Ning Shu touched the whip. "If you say so, then I won't go home and hand it over. I didn't expect you to give me such a good thing. Thank you." The Great Gate Star took a deep breath. Ning Shu asked again, "How did this kind of thing fall into the hands of Child Ronghua?" It was not that Ning Shu looked down on Child Ronghua, but Child Ronghua's strength was not enough to hold such a thing. Moreover, Child Ronghua's faction gave such a thing to him. Was Child Ronghua the illegitimate son of the faction's leader? The Great Gate Star said coldly, "Child Ronghua has a purpose." Ning Shu touched his chin. "Then there is only one reason. Since it's a primitive treasure, it must need someone to nourish it. It was given to Child Ronghua to nourish it." The Great Gate Star looked at Ning Shu and didn't say anything. Obviously, he agreed. So, he had to thank Child Ronghua, the temporary owner of the treasure, for giving him such a big gift. Ning Shu held the whip and felt more and more that this was a good thing. It was the first time he had heard of a primitive treasure in the void. The thing in her hand was hers. "I advise you to hand it over. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences." The Great Gate Star threatened. Ning Shu smiled and said, "It's okay, I can take it. My shoulders are quite strong, but I don't know if my body is strong enough to withstand the power of the whip. The Great Gate Planet looked vigilant. Ning Shu's system voice sounded again. Dear, don't cause trouble. Don't cause trouble in front of so many people. Everyone saw that you were the one who caused trouble for the Great Gate Planet. You are the one who is unreasonable. Ning Shu, I said to cause trouble immediately. Why is it that I'm causing trouble when I'm looking for someone? Why do you think I'm causing trouble? The system said. I guess the main system told me that you're always causing trouble. Ning Shu, this is a serious personal attack. How can the main system slander me like this? The system, that he didn't know how to respond to that. The Great Gate Planet stared at the whip. I'm giving you a sincere suggestion. This isn't something you can hold. The judge's gun is an innate treasure. Is it suitable for you to hold something of this level? Ning Shu, it's suitable. Why wouldn't it be suitable? Why wouldn't I be suitable? You think I'm not suitable because I'm not strong enough. He kept saying that she wasn't suitable to hold this thing. Why don't we fight? Let's see if I'm suitable to use this thing. The Great Gate Planet said, Are you sure you want to fight here? Ning Shu immediately took a step back and shouted in horror, What are you doing? What are you trying to do? You want to fight? I'm warning you, I'm going to fight back. Ning Shu's screams attracted the attention of the people around him. Everyone's eyes turned to look at them. The Great Gate Planet's face trembled. Shameless. The Great Gate Planet couldn't help but say. He had never seen someone like this. Are you still a woman? Ning Shu, I'm telling you, don't even think about taking what's mine. He put the whip behind his back and looked at the Great Gate Planet warily. We've picked up all the fragments. Hurry up and deal with the star stones. Hurry up. Someone came out to stop the fight. Ning Shu looked at the Great Gate Planet warily and started melting the star stones. He glanced at the Great Gate Planet warily. The Great Gate Planet, damn it. Now everyone thought he was going to snatch the thing. This thing was clearly theirs, but now everyone thought he was snatching it. Next, they would go to the next place where the plane was broken. Ning Shu and the Great Gate Star tacitly walked at the back. They dilly-dallied until everyone had left. Ning Shu took out the whip and wrapped it around the Great Gate Planet. He jumped into the void in an instant. The Great Gate Planet broke free from Ning Shu's whip. He knew that this person was here to cause trouble. Ning Shu looked sad. You can't snatch my whip. There's no one here. Why are you pretending to be a White Lotus? The Great Gate Planet said coldly. Ning Shu smiled. I'm not pretending. I'm a White Lotus. The Great Gate Planet took out his weapon. It was a giant battle axe. As soon as this axe appeared, it fluctuated with special energy. It looked like a good weapon. Ning Shu held the whip. He was full of expectations for this whip. Not bad, not bad. If he nurtured this whip well in the future, it might become his personal magic weapon in the future. It was simply awesome. Everyone saw that only the two people didn't come. They all had a tacit understanding. Let's go take a look. Okay, let's go take a look. It would be a fool not to watch the fun. The plane here is waiting to be dealt with. What are you afraid of? Even if something happens, it's the responsibility of those two people. It was those two people who were causing trouble and wasting everyone's time. Everyone came to the void and saw the girl being chased around by the Great Gate Planet. She covered her head and ran like a rat. As she ran, she shouted, Don't even think about snatching my things. The Great Gate Planet was almost angered to death. He was the one who was whipped by this girl. His soul power was sucked away, and it was very painful. It was very painful. But she was also very slippery. She would hide far away. But his weapon needed to be close to the enemy. Ning Shu shouted pitifully, This whip is mine. Don't even think about snatching it. Everyone had watched enough. They all went up to stop the fight. The Great Gate Planet suffered in the hands of Ning Shu. He was angry. Although someone came to stop the fight, the anger in his heart was not small. Ning Shu put away the whip. He felt that the Great Gate Planet's soul power was very strong. He felt that the whip had absorbed a lot of soul power. Yes. Ning Shu took advantage of the fact that someone came to stop the fight. He shouted, "I'm telling you, this whip is mine. Don't even think about snatching it." Everyone could see that Ning Shu was cowardly in appearance, modest and timid. The Great Gate Planet was about to explode. He was the one who suffered, but he couldn't say it out loud. Could he say that his soul power was sucked away? And the God-beating whip was very painful. The God-beating whip was something that even immortals could whip, let alone the soul. The soul being whipped was more painful than the body. Not everyone had the opportunity to have a strong soul. Chapter 3273. It was not easy to obtain something like the kidney-strengthening fruit. After suffering such a big loss, the giant gate star was unhappy. More importantly, the people around him had misunderstood that he was bullying others. If they pursued the matter, it would be his fault. He was the one who wanted to snatch things from others. Stop fooling around. Hurry up and deal with the broken plane. Ning Shu glared at the giant gate star and followed the large group to the place where the plane had been broken. During this process, Ning Shu looked at the giant gate star cautiously, as if he were afraid that the giant gate star would suddenly rush over. The giant gate star was unhappy. After completing the number of fragments, he left. Before leaving, he took a deep look at Ning Shu. That look was obviously waiting. Fine, he would wait. Upon seeing the giant gate star leave, Ning Shu let out a long sigh of relief. In the eyes of outsiders, he was very afraid of the giant gate star. Ning Shu really wanted to shake it. The God-beating whip was really a sharp weapon that restrained souls. It was especially harmful to souls. If anyone bullied her in the future, he would whip them. After dealing with it more than 100 times, Ning Shu applied to change shifts with the main system. It was almost time. This time, the shift was changed very quickly. The person who came to take over the shift came very quickly. Ning Shu was still not used to it. He was used to the main system dragging its feet. This time, someone came so quickly. He was not used to it. Since someone had come to change shifts, Ning Shu hurriedly left. More than 100 times meant more than 12 million merit points, which was enough for the skeletons to eat for a long time. When he was short of money, he would have merit points and money by dealing with some star stones. The person who changed shifts was the woman in purple. To be honest, Ning Shu was a little surprised to see her. From the person in charge of Zone B to the person who dealt with the star stones, her position had been demoted very quickly. The woman in purple said, "I'm here to change shifts. You can go." Ning Shu nodded. "Okay, I'll go then. By the way, aren't you going to the void now?" The woman in purple said, "There's no need to go for the time being. After all, we've found one. It's enough to deal with the emergency." Ning Shu nodded and asked, "Does that mean we have to find another one in the future?" The woman in purple replied, "Of course I'm going. It was a holiday period." Ning Shu left and made a trip to Water City. She wanted to see if Zhang Jiasen was still running a restaurant in Water City. Most likely not. Ning Shu was the first to arrive at Zhang Jiasen's restaurant, which was still open. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. This was a little strange. Zhang Jiasen still dared to open it now. Ning Shu walked into the restaurant, sat down and asked, "Who's your boss? Male or female?" The waiter said, "It's a woman." "A woman? Wasn't it a man?" Zhang Jiasen gave the shop to someone else. The boss is here, the waiter said. Ning Shu looked upstairs and was surprised to see Shu Bai. Shu Bai also saw Ning Shu. She was stunned for a moment before she walked down the stairs. Shu Bai sat opposite Ning Shu. What does the city lord want to eat? Ning Shu said, I'm no longer the city lord. You don't have to call me city lord. You opened this restaurant. Shu Bai shook her head and said, no, this restaurant is being sold, so I bought it. Ning Shu smiled slightly. Is that so? What's good? Bring it up and let me have a taste. By the way, congratulations on your business getting bigger and bigger. He had opened 2 restaurants in a city of laws. As for the discord, Ning Shu was too lazy to think about it. Of course, it had something to do with Shu Bai. Shu Bai still smiled gently. I just got a bargain, and it's all thanks to the city lord. Shu Bai can say that the only thing Shu Bai wanted was to stand by and do nothing. Shu Bai has never done anything to let the city lord down. If Shu Bai bought this restaurant and made the city lord feel uncomfortable, then Shu Bai can't do anything about it, Shu Bai said as she waved her round fan. Ning Shu smiled indifferently. What does what you do have to do with whether I feel uncomfortable or not? I won't feel uncomfortable because of a stranger. Alright, have the dishes been served? Shu Bai pursed her lips and said, City Lord, please wait for a moment. The dishes will be served soon. City Lord, Ning Shu interrupted her. Shu Bai, you don't rely on just one person, right? Therefore, she was able to decisively give up on someone who could protect her. Because there were many people protecting her, it didn't matter if there was one more or one less. Shu Bai smiled bitterly. Her body was filled with a dispirited aura. Those people can abandon me at any time. Why can't I rely on them? She was just a weak person who sought the protection of these strong people. She had lost her dignity. Weak people didn't have dignity. Ning Shu ate the dishes and ignored Shu Bai's expression. She took a sip of tea and said, What's there to be unwilling about? You were the one who made the decision. You couldn't bear it and gave up. Today's matter should have happened. If the strong didn't receive the treatment of the strong, would it be fair to the strong who sweated and bled? Shu Bai smiled. Of course, this was my choice. I won't regret any of the choices I made, including what I did to you. I chose to stand by and do nothing because I didn't have the ability to stop or resolve this matter. Even if the city lord hates me now, I won't regret it. Ning Shu shook his head. You are wrong. I don't hate you because you are not enough for me to hate. Shu Bai smiled. Yes, because I am just an ant beside your feet. No one would hate an ant. Who would care about an ant's feelings? Ning Shu put down his chopsticks and asked, How much? Shu Bai said, Just treat it as my treat, city lord. Ning Shu said, No need. I took 2 million merit points from doting last time and gave them to you. I don't like to owe people things. Shu Bai said, City lord, are you going to cut ties with me now? Ning Shu said, Can't I? It's best to cut ties with you. Ning Shu returned the 2 million plus merit points to Shu Bai. She smirked and said coldly, I hope that your business will become more and more prosperous. Ning Shu didn't want to listen to what Shu Bai had to say. Maybe there was someone behind Shu Bai, but would those big shots really care about Shu Bai's little merit points? For example, every time she processed a star stone, she would receive merit in just a few minutes. The restaurant's business wasn't very good. It was good enough that it could break even. Ning Shu went to the City of Witches. Since Zhang Jiasen was the city lord of the City of Witches, they might meet there. Zhang Jiasen had been protected by the judges before he was taken away by the grand uncle. If they met in the City of Witches, there would be no one around to protect him. The judges who protected Zhang Jiasen seemed to have been punished. The grand uncle was nowhere to be found. He didn't believe that there would be anyone protecting Zhang Jiasen now. The system said, "Are you going to stir up trouble again?" The system felt very tired. Wherever it went, it would cause trouble. The main system asked it to take care of this task enforcer. Chapter 3274. But this mission enforcer looked wild and mischievous. He couldn't control her at all. Ning Shu said, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just here to see an old friend. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry my ass. Not at all." It had only been a short time, but it was already making him a little scared. If something really happened, he would face the fate of being formatted. The system said helplessly, "Actually, you don't have to be so anxious. Take your time in the future. If you're so anxious, the main system will tighten its watch on you. Although I take orders from the main system, I will stand by your side and make suggestions that are beneficial to you." Ning Shu smiled and said casually, "Don't worry, I won't cause trouble." The system didn't believe him at all. He said that he wouldn't cause trouble, but he still got into a fight. Ning Shu said, "Someone tried to steal my things, and I was forced to defend myself. I didn't want to cause trouble." The system was helpless. "Then what are you doing here? Aren't you here to look for Zhang Jiasen?" Before becoming Ning Shu's system, the system already knew enough about this mission enforcer's life story. So, when Ning Shu came to which city, the system knew that she was here to look for Zhang Jiasen. She was quite vengeful. She would take revenge for the smallest grievance. Ning Shu laughed and didn't talk to the system anymore. No matter what the system said, it couldn't tie her legs. In the end, it just kept nagging in her ear. Ning Shu obviously knew that the system was reminding her to be careful, but she might not be able to find Zhang Jiasen. After this incident, Zhang Jiasen should have holed himself up and wouldn't appear easily. She was just here to take a stroll. If Zhang Jiasen knew that she was looking for him, he wouldn't appear so easily in the future. He couldn't even appear in his own territory all the time. He was like a thief. He was the mayor of which city, but he couldn't appear in the open. How aggrieved and unbearable must he be? Zhang Jiasen must have cultivated his own forces in which city. Now that she appeared in which city, it wouldn't be long before Zhang Jiasen found out. Zhang Jiasen was disgusting her, and now she was also disgusting Zhang Jiasen. Let's see how long you can hide. Even if you come to which city to consolidate the enchantment, you will have to be very careful for fear of being caught. Ning Shu walked towards the city lord's mansion, wondering if Zhang Jiasen would be there. Ning Shu stood in front of the city lord's mansion. The city lord's mansion had an enchantment, and it was connected to the enchantment of the entire Law City. Ning Shu was not the city lord of which city, so naturally, he could not enter the city lord's mansion. The door was not an obstacle, the barrier was. Ning Shu stared at the door. The door creaked open. Zhang Jiasen opened the door and looked into Ning Shu's eyes. Zhang Jiasen closed the door before the two of them could react. Ning Shu hurriedly walked over, but was blocked by the barrier. Ning Shu slapped the barrier and shouted, "If you have the ability to frame people, open the door, open the door." Zhang Jiasen stood in the city lord's mansion and looked at Ning Shu slapping the barrier through the crack of the door. Why was this woman still alive? She had openly challenged the rules of the organization. Why was he still able to appear here now? The judges were really useless. One was one, two were also useless. They couldn't even deal with a woman. Zhang Jiasen opened the door and said, "I've opened the door, but you can't come in. Unless you break the barrier. But if you break the barrier, the enchantment of the Law City will shatter. At that time, the law power outside the city will pour into the city, and the city will be destroyed. Do you dare?" Ning Shu shrugged and shook his head. "I don't dare. But it doesn't matter. I'll stay here until you come out." Don't even think about returning to the system space. Although the City Lord's mansion has a barrier, I made another layer of barrier to bind you inside. The surrounding space has been sealed. If I can't get in, don't even think about getting out. Zhang Jiasen laughed in a low voice. In the end, he laughed out loud, as if he couldn't stop. Ning Shu looked at him with an expressionless face and laughed wildly. Finally, Zhang Jiasen stopped laughing and coughed twice. Should I feel honored that you spent so much time waiting for me? I'm really flattered that you care so much about me. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. In any case, Zhang Jiasen's way of thinking was different from ordinary people. What did he mean by caring about the steps? If he was bitten by an ant, it was fine if he couldn't find the ant, but if he found it, wouldn't it make sense if he didn't hammer the ant to death? Did this mean that she cared? No, only Zhang Jiasen could say that she cared. Ning Shu said, think whatever you want. Think whatever you want. It didn't matter even if Zhang Jiasen said that she loved him. In any case, Zhang Jiasen's way of thinking was strange. Zhang Jiasen simply sat down on the threshold and looked at Ning Shu. Aren't you tired of standing? Do you want me to pull a chair for you? No need. Ning Shu sat directly on the vine. Zhang Jiasen laughed and looked quite happy. We seem to have never had the chance to sit face to face like this and have a good talk. Ning Shu said, I don't want to have a good talk with you. There's nothing to talk about. If it wasn't for the ward, I would have already hammered you to death. Zhang Jiasen said, even if you say that, I'm very happy that you want to spend time on me. Ning Shu tilted his head. You really lack love. He craved love and despised it. Meow 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 loved him so much back then, but he didn't care. When others were disdainful of him, he was eager to please them. Zhang Jiasen thought for a while. I do lack love. As the male child that the family used all their resources to cultivate, his parents, sisters and brothers all pinned their hopes on him. They constantly reminded him that he was the hope of the family and that whether the family could live a good life depended on him. All the eyes of the family were focused on him, and the neglected children looked at him with envy, jealousy and helplessness. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu. Yes, I lack love. She gave him a huge responsibility, and all the attention was because of this responsibility. Ning Shu said, what does your lack of love have to do with me? She wouldn't give Zhang Jiasen love. There were so many people in the world. Could she love them all? She wouldn't use love to change people. She could only cremate them. Zhang Jiasen only chased after what he didn't have. Once he had it, it was like throwing away grass. Zhang Jiasen was already immune to the cold and heartless Ning Shu. Hearing her say this, his gaze didn't change at all. He knew that the woman in front of him would say this. She was cold-hearted and wouldn't give anyone any care or warmth. Chapter 3275. Zhang Jiasen was unwilling to come out. He had been hiding in the city lord's mansion. He seemed to be quite happy. Ning Shu felt that it was a waste of time to guard outside. With this time, he might as well do other things. Doing missions and looking for treasures were more interesting than this. Ning Shu thought about it and opened the world of reincarnation. He summoned a skeleton and asked the skeleton to guard for him. If Zhang Jiasen had the ability, he would stay inside for the rest of his life. Ning Shu put a layer of enchantment on the skeleton so that others could not see its appearance. However, once Zhang Jiasen came out, the skeleton would immediately inform her and she would be able to rush over. She had a skeleton under her command. Why not use it? With someone guarding for her, she could do other things. Ning Shu glanced at Zhang Jiasen and said to the skeleton, keep an eye on him. If anything happens, report to me immediately. I will rush over soon. The skeleton said, okay. It was too easy to just keep an eye on one person. Ning Shu said again, by the way, we are already here. This is a city of laws. Try to see if you can comprehend the power of laws. The skeleton walked the path of violence. It strengthened its own strength and consolidated its defense. It did not seem to have any power of laws. If these skeletons could comprehend the power of laws, they might be able to reach a higher level. A strong defensive ability could be given by merit. As long as there was enough merit and it could be absorbed, one's bones could become very strong. However, comprehending the power of laws required comprehension. He did not know if there were any skeletons that could comprehend merit. The skeleton obviously did not know what the power of laws was. However, Ning Shu said that the skeleton would try its best to comprehend it. Ning Shu said to Zhang Jiasen, "Then you can stay inside. I have locked the surrounding space. If you don't do missions, you will be unlucky." If she could not even deal with these small fries, what was the point of her? As for attacking the giant gate planet, it was to lure the people of that faction to attack her again. Only then could she disturb that faction. When she attacked the giant gate planet, she was slapping the face of that faction. It would be strange if those people could tolerate it. Her attitude made it clear that she would not let this matter rest. Since the innate fetal treasure was in her hands, those people would not let him go either. He wanted to test the power of the whip and let his intentions be known. So far, she hadn't met many people from that faction, only two, young Master Ronghua and Great Gate Star. As for Zhang Jiasen, he was just a small character in this game. He probably wasn't a member of that faction. Even if they were from that faction, they would probably be peripheral figures who could be abandoned at any time. They couldn't be considered core figures. Therefore, there were some things that had to be stirred up. They had to beat the grass and alert the snake. If this faction came to save Zhang Jiasen, then it meant that Zhang Jiasen was a member of this faction. Since they were willing to waste time and manpower to save Zhang Jiasen, it meant that Zhang Jiasen was still useful in this faction. When Zhang Jiasen saw the skeleton, he looked quite shocked. He had never seen such a skeleton before. After all, he had never been on the battlefield before, and he had never seen an abyssal prefect skeleton before. Thus, he stared at the golden skeleton in amazement. Zhang Jiasen was the city lord of the City of Witches and had already come into contact with merit. When he saw the skeleton shining with golden light, he was even more surprised. These skeletons were actually made of merit. Hearing Ning Shu's words, Zhang Jiasen was a little speechless. If it was Ning Shu who was guarding him, he would be quite happy. However, it was such a skeleton guarding him, which made him unhappy. It was Ning Shu who had been accompanying him. He didn't care. He was more than happy that she was willing to waste time with him. However, Zhang Jiasen felt that it was wrong to use a skeleton as a substitute. If he was trapped here, he wouldn't be able to complete the mission. The mission had a number and time limit. If he couldn't meet the requirements, he might be obliterated. The organization had always been merciless. However, if they were merciless, they would keep the people who challenged the organization's bottom line alive. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu. Why was she still alive? Why? Zhang Jiasen couldn't understand. She was the one who was causing trouble. He was innocent, a kind and ordinary mission enforcer who was being bullied. However, she used her strength to bully the weak and challenged the rule of not fighting in the City of Laws. She still lived until now. He was trapped in the city lord's mansion and couldn't get out. If she was the one who blocked him, he could still look at her and feel a little better. However, she used a skeleton as a substitute. She wasn't even willing to waste this little bit of time on him. In her heart, he was a worthless person. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu, his eyes a little blank. He asked, "Why aren't you dead yet? Why did she challenge the rules?" If he showed up in that situation, there was an 80% chance that she would die under the organization's rules. Ning Shu, I'm not telling you. You'll be pissed to death. Ning Shu wanted to see if anyone would come to save him. Ning Shu, by the way, the space here has been sealed. You can't send a message out, and you can't return to the system space unless you walk out of the city lord's mansion. Zhang Jiasen laughed. He sneered and said, "It seems that I don't know the organization very well, which led to this mistake." Yes, he should. In fact, for the organization, there were only two standards to measure people, useless and useful. The standards for useful people were different, and the useless people were judged according to the rules. It wasn't that complicated. Ning Shu ignored Zhang Jiasen and asked the skeleton to comprehend the law. It would be best if it could comprehend it, but if it couldn't, he wouldn't force it. After all, the skeleton took the violent route and directly used its hard body to smash the opponent. Ning Shu left the City of Witches and returned to the system space, throwing the star stones he collected this time into the ultimate martial arts. Now, inside the ultimate martial arts was a vast ocean. There was no land, no mountains, and no clouds. Previously, it seemed to have slowly evolved into land. Right now, it was a boundless ocean. Ning Shu didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that the law of nothingness had changed again, and it was bigger than before. Perhaps it was because she had thrown an energy body into it before, which allowed the law of nothingness to gain more energy and become bigger. It felt like she was helping the enemy. If the energy body didn't have energy fluctuations, Ning Shu wouldn't have thrown it here. Unexpectedly, the energy body given by Li Wen was taken away by someone else before it could warm up. Now that she thought about it, it was quite distressing. After all, it was something that the organization had spent so much manpower and resources to obtain. She just threw it away, and it was to the law of nothingness that was a threat to her life. However, the law of nothingness was calm. Nothing happened, and the law of nothingness didn't riot. Chapter 3277. His Excellency had a lot of skeletons. If every skeleton came to comprehend the laws, the city would be overcrowded. The main system said, "You'd better not let your skeletons comprehend the laws. The skeletons that comprehend the laws will have the power of the laws. Some powers are mutually exclusive, and it will be difficult for the skeletons to fuse. The skeletons can disperse and condense into a larger body because every skeleton is the same and doesn't repel each other. But if you use the power of the laws, do you think these skeletons can successfully fuse together? Don't throw away the watermelon to pick up the sesame seed. Have you ever seen His Excellency let his skeletons comprehend the power of the laws? If this method could work, His Excellency would have done it long ago." Ning Shu said. "It sounds reasonable." The main system said, "It makes sense. Hurry up and get rid of the skeletons blocking the door." Ning Shu touched her chin and suddenly felt that it was very interesting. The main system personally told her that Zhang Jiasen was just a small shrimp. Why did it bother the main system? Was Zhang Jiasen really that powerful? Probably not. It was so obvious that they were targeting her. They were probably from that faction. Talking about Zhang Jiasen was nothing more than to disgust her. They could also sell Zhang Jiasen a favor. Ning Shu asked, "I remember that I blocked the space. How did the news still reach your ears?" The main system said. "Do you think so many people are blind? You said you wouldn't cause trouble. How long have you been back? Didn't your system tell you?" Ning Shu cried out, "I really didn't cause trouble. I just went to find him. He didn't want to see me at all and hid in the house, so I could only let people block the door." However, Ning Shu still went to Witch City and sent the skeletons back to the world of Samsara. Although the main system didn't want the skeletons to be in the city, what it said was not unreasonable. When she had time, she would ask His Excellency. Oh, His Excellency seemed to have blacklisted her. Since she couldn't ask His Excellency, she would ask the other skeletons. She also had the contact information of the skeletons under His Excellency. Although there were laws that restrained each other, there were also laws that reinforced each other. The 7 basic laws reinforced and restrained each other. Seeing Ning Shu appear again, Zhang Jiasen smiled and said, "What's wrong? You don't want people to guard me anymore?" Ning Shu said, "Even if I don't let people guard you, do you dare to come out?" Even if she really wasn't in this city anymore, Zhang Jiasen wouldn't dare to come out. He was afraid that she would hide somewhere and plot against him. Zhang Jiasen said, "I wouldn't dare. I am indeed afraid of you. But when it comes to rules, you can't beat me." Ning Shu chuckled. "What's so fun about playing by the rules? Jumping out of the rules, that's the fun part. Rules were used to regulate others. What was the point of finding loopholes in the rules?" Zhang Jiasen narrowed his eyes. "You have a point." Ning Shu was quite happy. The more the faction did, the happier Ning Shu was. He had already said that he would stir up trouble in that faction. Zhang Jiasen had a grudge against him, and the enemy of an enemy was a friend. He reckoned that a small fry like Zhang Jiasen had entered the eyes of that faction. Ning Shu said, "You really should thank me. Otherwise, you wouldn't even have the chance to be a lackey." Although Zhang Jiasen was now the city lord of a city of laws, Ning Shu knew that the law incarnation was not a difficult task at all. Only with the rules could one barely pick up the fragments. If the power of the rules was not strong enough, one could not even pick up the fragments, let alone go to the endless void. Zhang Jiasen was not annoyed. He said, "Of course it's good to be able to fight like this. If someone is willing to give me this power, why wouldn't I use it? Although I don't know why you offended them, to me, this is an opportunity. We don't know who will be using who." Zhang Jiasen stretched out his hand and followed the barrier. His face was a little blurry. "Ning Shu, let's work together. As long as we work together, I believe that our strength will not be 1 + 1 = 2. What I'm doing now is just to let you see my ability. Although I'm very weak now, I will use all my strength to achieve my goal. As long as we work together, we will be very strong. That faction bullied you because they saw that you were alone, so they bullied you at will. As long as we work together." Ning Shu almost laughed out loud. She looked at Zhang Jiasen. "Do you think I will work with you?" Zhang Jiasen nodded without hesitation. "Yes, because no one knows you as well as I do and loves you." Love? The word love was used to describe liking an object. In Zhang Jiasen's eyes, she was an object. Ning Shu was not angry at all. Zhang Jiasen knew her, and she also knew what kind of person Zhang Jiasen was. Work together. Work together. Then she should be saying, "Did you succeed in attracting my attention?" Ning Shu felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you going to say that you have done so much to attract my attention?" Zhang Jiasen, then have you noticed me? Ning Shu flipped her hair and smiled. "Are you so infatuated with me?" It was not a lucky thing to be infatuated with a pervert. She was lucky that she had power. If she did not have power, she would be reduced to a pitiful state. "Zhang Jiasen, if I say that I am infatuated with you, you will definitely not believe me." "Yes, I am deeply infatuated with you." "I guess you won't believe me." "Ning Shu, then be infatuated with me." Infatuation was just a means. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu with deep eyes. "We are the most suitable people to work together. We have endless years and can pursue stronger things together." Ning Shu sneered. "What right do you have to stand side by side with me?" She worked hard to become stronger, not to stand side by side with anyone, and not to cooperate with anyone just because of a half-truth. She did not join any factions and did not seem to have many people around her. She had to solve everything by herself. However, in contrast, she had freedom that no one else could have. Whatever she enjoyed, she would be bound by this thing. "Zhang Jiasen, I will make myself qualified to stand side by side with you." I will become someone you cannot reject. Ning Shu just smiled. There is nothing that can be forced to do. You can't. You will never be able to do it. Zhang Jiasen touched his chest as if he was hurt by Ning Shu's words. He sneered. See, we are so similar. We have always been so unscrupulous in hurting others and only pursue what we want. Why should we care about those things that we don't care about? You despise me for abandoning Meow Meow Meow. Meow Meow loves me so much, but I treat her like grass. Ungrateful. Chapter 3279. She was really happy that the system valued her so much. Valuing her meant that it acknowledged her strength, which was a good thing. Ning Shu asked, other than having you watch over me, does the main system have any other intentions? Since the system was a smart person, Ning Shu naturally wanted to be one with the system and become a cooperative partner. Ning Shu said, you should know about my background. Because of what happened before, I don't really trust the system. Since we've already been assigned together, we should try to get along peacefully. Actually, our world isn't an organization, but the Sea of Stars. Have you seen it outside of the organization? The world doesn't have an organization, the outside world is much bigger. What I mean is that you shouldn't take the organization's words too seriously. Our goal is the Sea of Stars. I won't openly go against the organization's rules. I know what I'm doing. Ning Shu said. The system said, I might not be able to see the Sea of Stars if you do something like that from time to time. Ning Shu said, don't say such discouraging words. You'll definitely be able to see it, trust me. The system was speechless. Ning Shu said, that's why I won't be impulsive. Just trust me. From a lowly position to where he was now, did he not know when to advance and when to retreat? Even if he had to endure, he also had to show off. Was he going to keep holding it in? He had to know when to advance and when to retreat. Retreating was a strategic retreat, and advancing was obviously an attack. He would not be able to hurt the enemy if he kept retreating. In short, it was all to get what he wanted. Ning Shu also wanted to use Zhang Jiasen's incident to have an open and honest discussion with the system. Since he could communicate well, there was no need to keep an enemy by his side. Ning Shu said, I can roughly understand your position. You're in a dilemma. But in this situation, I didn't cause any trouble. I didn't fight in the City of Laws, so the main system can't determine that I'm causing trouble. Did I fight? No, I didn't. Sometimes, you shouldn't take the organization's words to heart. Since the main system said that I can't openly go against it, I didn't fight. The system remained silent. She stood in front of Zhang Jiasen's city lord's mansion and said that she was causing trouble. This was too unreasonable. Moreover, whether Zhang Jiasen left the city lord's mansion or not, his legs were on his body. She could control Zhang Jiasen's legs. He was the one who had holed himself up in the city lord's mansion. Did she violate the rules of the organization? Of course not. If we work together, it'll be easier than running away alone. I don't think we've bound our souls yet. The system said, yes, it's not bound. When we don't have absolute understanding, when we trust each other, you won't bind with me. So, I haven't thought of binding our souls yet. Ning Shu felt that the system was really thorough in its work. Rather than saying that it was because of her, it would be better to say that the system was actually unwilling to be bound to her. Being bound to her meant that they would have to live and die together, and she seemed to be a thorn in the main system's side. Originally, he had come with a mission, so his relationship with the system was different from the usual mission enforcers. This system was organized to supervise her, and its position was subtle. Moreover, this system could be implicated by her at any time, and its feelings might be even more subtle. So, from the system's point of view, she was an unlikable person. Ning Shu said, if that's the case, then let's bind our souls. The system asked, are you sure you want to bind your souls with me? Once our souls are bound, it means that we will live and die together. Our relationship hasn't reached that stage yet. Maybe it won't be too late for us to make plans after we get to know each other better. Ning Shu's lips curled up. Sure, I'm not afraid. You can bind your souls with me whenever you want. There were some things that one didn't need to be afraid of, and there was no need to be afraid of. She had already put aside the life and death battle, so why would she be afraid of a system? Moreover, this system couldn't kill her. So, she was fearless. Binding her soul was fine, but the system had more concerns. Ning Shu asked, have you thought of a name? The system said, a name is just a code. It doesn't matter if you have one or not. Besides, it's better not to have a name if you don't remember the past. Interesting. Ning Shu didn't force the system to bind with her. Since it wasn't willing, she naturally wouldn't force it. She might not be afraid of anything, but it was obvious that the system was afraid. I'll let you see more in the future, then you won't be afraid of anything. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen in the barrier, wondering if anyone would come to save him. If someone really did come, then Zhang Jiasen was really valuable. She had already set up the stage, and now she was waiting for all kinds of people to come on stage. Others used Zhang Jiasen to act as a middleman, and she could also use Zhang Jiasen to act as a middleman. Wasn't it easy to create a conflict? She just had to see who could be lured out. She hoped that it wouldn't disappoint her. If Zhang Jiasen couldn't lure people out, she wouldn't bother with Zhang Jiasen and would just drag him into the void and kill him. Zhang Jiasen's eyes flashed, and his brain was working quickly. He looked at Ning Shu. I told you we were the most compatible people, and we can do anything to achieve our goals. Ning Shu couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him, and directly blocked Zhang Jiasen's words. He could think whatever he wanted. Ning Shu hoped that Zhang Jiasen would sink into his own fantasies and fantasize more. Who knew, maybe he would take his fantasies for real. The system said, someone sent you a message. It's Su Li. The system didn't know this person. The system knew a few things about Ning Shu, but it didn't know who Ning Shu was in contact with in private. Ning Shu sat in front of the city lord's residence and asked, what did he say? He said he wants you to go find treasures with him. Oh, that was to go to the void. Ning Shu said, tell him to wait for a while. I'll take care of things here. Okay. At this moment, there should be many people paying attention to this side. As long as she stayed here, there would be many eyes on this side. Ever since the main system found out about this matter, Ning Shu knew that someone was watching her at all times. It was just a matter of who popped out first. She had reached an irreconcilable point with that faction. Unless she handed over the Holy Whip, but something like the Holy Whip could only be found by chance. Why should she hand it over? What was in her hands was hers. Moreover, if she handed over the Holy Whip, she wouldn't get a single good word from others. They would even laugh at her for being a coward. Letting go of her hand and handing over the Holy Whip, bowing and groveling, she really looked like a coward. Ning Shu couldn't bear to look straight at her. There were only a few people in this organization. As for who else was in the organization, he didn't know at all. Moreover, Ning Shu understood that even if a mission taker joined a faction, they wouldn't shout about which faction they belonged to. Chapter 3280. The confidentiality measures were still very strong. Perhaps a familiar person beside you was from a certain faction, but you didn't know about it at all. For example, Ning Shu didn't know which faction the Cheongsam man had joined, and the Cheongsam man hadn't told her which faction he had joined. Factions were really mysterious things. Therefore, it was good to use Zhang Jiasen to lure the snake out of its hole. Zhang Jiasen was probably only a little useful. Ning Shu took out the god-beating whip and stroked it, carefully sensing the whip. It was said that it could produce consciousness. Could this kind of baby also become an intelligent creature? As long as it had intelligence, it could be considered a creature. Although it didn't have the ability to reproduce like ordinary creatures, the birth of this kind of thing couldn't be ordinary. It was the accumulation of the essence of heaven and earth, and it had to be nurtured for a long time. Ning Shu had seen many creatures that were born and raised by heaven and earth, so he didn't find it strange. He couldn't treat this whip as an ordinary weapon, but as a doll. There were so many dolls. Ning Shu touched the whip and was full of motherly instinct. "Doll, what do you want to eat?" "Alright," the whip doll didn't respond at all. It only said that it could produce intelligence, but it didn't say that it was born with intelligence. The whip would slowly produce intelligence and needed to be nurtured. Ning Shu was speechless. Did he have to carry out prenatal education? Did he have to talk to the whip so that it could produce intelligence? Ning Shu was a little impatient. It seems that no one will come to save you. How disappointing. The stage was already set up. Why didn't those people come? Zhang Jiasen didn't say anything because he didn't know if anyone would come. Because he was just an insignificant person. They're here. Ning Shu saw someone land in front of the City Lord Mansion. Their target was the City Lord Mansion, and the landing point was the City Lord Mansion. Ning Shu saw the Great Gate Star and asked in surprise, why is it you again? Was there no one else in this faction? Why was it always the Great Gate Star? Zhu Menxing tried to calm himself down. This time, he was not here to fight, but to negotiate. Zhu Menxing did not even look at Zhang Jiasen, who was trapped in the City Lord's mansion. He looked at Ning Shu and said, "Weren't you waiting for someone? Now that I'm here, you must be very disappointed." Ning Shu covered her mouth and laughed. "I realize that you men are really interesting when you talk. It's quite funny. All of them were like this." The difference in thinking between men and women was really big. Although they had already become souls, things like thinking were deeply rooted. Zhu Menxing felt numb all over from Ning Shu's laughter. It was really annoying. Previously, he had laughed like this while feeling wronged. He didn't want to deal with such a woman at all. She was neither soft nor hard. She was used to putting on airs, just like Doe. Moreover, because of their gender, she felt that he was bullying her. He was a man bullying a woman. She was small, thin, and weak. At first glance, one could tell that she didn't have any strength. She seemed very lovable, but Zhu Menxing couldn't forget the feeling of being whipped. Zhu Menxing said, "Let him out. This matter has nothing to do with him." It was just a casual sentence to do a favor. As for whether the other party would let him go or not, Zhu Menxing didn't care at all. To Zhu Menxing, the city lord of a law city and a law incarnation were nothing in his eyes. Ning Shu ignored Zhu Menxing's words. Since Zhang Jiasen liked to stay inside, then he could stay inside. Zhang Jiasen was speechless. Why did he feel like an ant, watching two giants talk, but the two giants simply ignored him? This feeling was really terrible. It couldn't be worse. The feeling of being ignored was worse than being remembered or even hated. Hatred at least meant that the other party had taken him to heart. This feeling was really terrible. It was very terrible. Zhu Menxing said, "I'm not here to fight with you this time. What do you want in order to hand over the god-beating whip?" Ning Shu looked at Zhu Menxing in surprise. "Why aren't you fighting?" Zhu Menxing was speechless. Why should he fight? He had already received the news that this guy had an immortal body. He was a bug. How could he fight? Moreover, even if he was crippled, he couldn't be killed. What could he do? He had spent a lot of effort, but this monster just couldn't die. He was so angry. Facing this kind of person, since he couldn't use force, he would use a soft approach. Ning Shu said, "Then what do you want in exchange for the god-beating whip?" It can only be more valuable than the god-beating whip. If not, then I definitely can't hand over the god-beating whip. Is there no one else in your faction? To be honest, I'm a little tired of your face. Can you change to someone else? Zhu Menxing's expression was very ugly. He really didn't know how to negotiate with this woman. He felt that nothing could get through to her. This kind of person was full of thorns. He couldn't kill her. He didn't care much about negotiating. Moreover, the other party was obviously targeting them. He couldn't give up on the god-beating whip. However, if she took out something of the same value as the god-beating whip, why bother exchanging it for the god-beating whip? In short, this was a very troublesome matter. Zhu Menxing didn't fucking want to come. Ning Shu was just about to say something when he raised his eyelids. He saw Tai Shu floating there in black. He was silent and didn't move at all. He just stared at them. Peeping Tom. He stared at them all the time. He never appeared. When things got out of control, he would appear to find them. This urban management officer was sinister. Ning Shu lowered his eyes and said to Zhu Menxing, "It's not easy to get together. Let's go to a restaurant and have a drink." Zhu Menxing was speechless. Ning Shu whispered, "Is the judge watching?" Zhu Menxing immediately adjusted his facial muscles and put on a familiar look. He smiled and said, "Okay. Who's the bastard if you don't drink?" "Okay, bastard." When Ning Shu looked up again, Tai Shu had disappeared. Zhu Menxing also glanced at him. The two of them pulled a long face at the same time. They were no longer as friendly as before. Zhu Menxing said to Ning Shu, "Why don't we find a restaurant to talk? Who knows if the judge is still watching?" Ning Shu felt that Tai Shu was probably just passing by. He saw that they were about to fight and stared. He probably really left. No need to go to a restaurant. He thought it would attract other people. Exchange for the god-beating whip? Sorry, no exchange. However, since someone had sent something good, he had to see what it was. Ning Shu asked, "What is it?" Ning Shu wouldn't forget what happened before. It wouldn't be over so easily. After all, she had said that she would turn that faction upside down. Zhu Menxing looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. "Are you willing to exchange?" Chapter 3281. The giant gate star said, "What do you want?" "We can buy it with merit." Ning Shu said, Merit? You seem to be making me laugh. Although merit is precious, it is more precious than something that can only be found by chance. But a treasure born in the void? The giant gate star also realized that merit was not attractive to her. After all, she could get merit by dealing with star stones. The giant gate star said, "What do you want?" Ning Shu said, "I am an ignorant person. I don't know anything good. If you have something good, take it out." The giant gate star thought for a while and said, "I have a treasure. Do you want it?" Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. This faction is really rich. Jealousy is making me unrecognizable. Ning Shu asked curiously, "What kind of treasure is it?" A treasure is a treasure. There is no difference. As for what kind of weapon it will become, it depends on the development. Ning Shu thought. I am an ignorant person. Ignorance makes me beautiful. Although he was a little ignorant, he knew that using a treasure to exchange for a weapon that had already taken shape was obviously more valuable. Because the treasure needed to be nurtured, it was not certain what kind of weapon it would become. This whip had already taken shape. The most important thing was that it was quite good. It was also a weapon that specialized in restraining the soul element. Its value was even higher. Ning Shu only chuckled. Using such a method of exchange, she was afraid that he was treating her as a fool. The giant gate star said, "To tell you the truth, as long as you take a step back, everyone will be at peace. If we insist on snatching it, it is not impossible. Using a treasure to exchange for something that originally belonged to us is also to reconcile. It is better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. You don't want people watching you every day, right? Ning Shu nodded and asked curiously, since it is a reconciliation, why do I have to be the one at a disadvantage and not you guys at a disadvantage to form a friendship? She had never wanted to provoke these people. She had found something, and these people insisted on sharing it. When the thing fell into her hands, they wanted to take it back. Did he think everyone else was stupid? Could it be that he was going to offer it up with both hands? Although your strength is not bad, compared to us, you are nothing, Great Gate Star said. I am really not considered a strong person in the organization. Right now, I'm the only one dealing with this matter. Once the stronger ones make their move, things will reach an irreversible stage. TSK, on one hand, she despised her and said that she was not qualified, and on the other hand, she wanted to reconcile. While scaring him, he also looked down on him. What's the point of reconciling? They were probably trying to say, our faction is very powerful, don't go against us, we'll give you some benefits and you should stop while you're ahead. Since it was a negotiation, he should put on airs and be serious. Since it was like this, there was no way to negotiate. Ning Shu casually raised his eyelids and saw that the Grand Elder was floating in the air again. He didn't know when, but he didn't move at all. He seemed to be looking at them, but at the same time, he wasn't looking. Ning Shu was speechless. She had a feeling that he was waiting for them to start fighting. She had a feeling that he was catching her in the wrong and punishing her with all his might. Now, it was more expensive for her to process star rocks than before. Moreover, she could produce star rocks as soon as she did it. Could it be that he wanted to strip all these benefits from her? Or let her do it for free? According to the stingy nature of the organization, it was entirely possible that they would just wait here and make a big fuss out of nothing. Fuck, Zhu Menxing followed Ning Shu's gaze and saw the Grand Elder. His expression was a little strange, and he said to Ning Shu, it seems that you don't intend to exchange. Then this matter won't be played like this. Ning Shu glanced at the Grand Elder, patted his chest, and said to Zhu Menxing, I'm so scared. If you have the ability, then come and snatch it. Ning Shu immediately waved to the Grand Elder and said, Judge, this person wants to make a move on me in the City of Laws. He wants to snatch my whip. I will never make a move in the City of Laws. Zhu Menxing's expression didn't change, and he chuckled. Obviously, he was used to Ning Shu complaining. Zhu Menxing turned to the Grand Elder and said, I didn't think of making a move here. It's just a small conflict. It'll be fine after we talk it out. He didn't make a move, so what was there to be afraid of? The Grand Elder floated in the air, injured, and didn't speak. He looked like a puppet or a shadow. An avatar. Then, the Grand Elder disappeared again. He didn't pay attention to Ning Shu and Zhu Menxing at all. Zhu Menxing's eyes were very unfriendly. Since you don't want to do this, then don't blame us for being rude. Zhu Menxing lowered his voice. So what if you have an immortal body? You can't move an inch. Ning Shu pointed to Zhu Menxing and said to the Grand Elder, Judge, he threatened people in front of you. Is this considered a disturbance of public order? Zhu Menxing frowned. Isn't that childish? What's the point of doing this? Even if he complained, the judge wouldn't necessarily help him. The judge wouldn't take sides. Instead, he would punish according to the conditions. Ning Shu said, if I die, it must be you who did it. Zhu Menxing couldn't help but laugh. A dead person. Do you think the organization will be so free as to seek justice for a dead person? So what? There's no value in seeking justice. If you die, it means you're weak. It means you're useless. You're such a weakling. Do you want others to seek justice for you? Only the living are valuable. The dead are dead. The dead were worthless. They wouldn't come back to life. Zhu Menxing said, "Why are you so naive?" Ning Shu pursed his lips. Naive? In the future, when she really woke up, she would be innocent. You guys bullied her too much. She was just forced to resist. Ning Shu didn't expect the organization to help. She was so helpless, weak, pitiful, and bullied. She could only fight with all her might. In this situation, there was no way to continue talking. Since they couldn't reconcile, then there was no need to reconcile. Ning Shu, reconcile? What was this? She was so narrow-minded. When others came to snatch her things, she wanted to share what she found. If she didn't share, she was stingy and narrow-minded. Now, if she gave a little something and wanted to reconcile, she still wouldn't reconcile. She even gave things to others to make up for the things that happened to her before. When did she become so soft-hearted? She didn't say that it was better to have one more friend than one more enemy. Even if she did that, others might not like her. Instead, they would despise her. It was already like this. Why should she reconcile? Zhu Menxing snorted coldly and was about to leave. Ning Shu smiled and asked, "Don't you care about the people in the city lord's residence? They're at least taking the lead for you. Don't you feel bad and disappointed by doing this?" Chapter 3282. The Great Gate Star glanced at Zhang Jiasen, who didn't have much of a presence. "Would you let him out if I asked you to?" Ning Shu said, "I didn't lock him up. If he doesn't want to come out, what can I do?" The Great Gate Star was too lazy to bother with this person, so he directly broke the space seal of the mayor's residence. However, even if the space seal was lifted, Zhang Jiasen still didn't dare to come out. This was very awkward. The grand uncle appeared and disappeared mysteriously. He was here just now, but now he wasn't. What was wrong with him? Ning Shu suspected that her eyes were playing tricks on her. That was why she had seen wrongly. There must be something going on here, so the grand uncle was here. However, because the grand uncle appeared from time to time, the negotiation between Ning Shu and the Great Gate Star came to an abrupt end. There was no more discussion. In fact, both of them knew that this negotiation wouldn't succeed. It would only make things worse, and there wouldn't even be a chance to ease things up. Ning Shu was speechless. If the grand uncle didn't seem to have flashed past, he could have pulled the Great Gate Star directly into the void. Maybe he could even get a baby treasure. Although he already had a whip, he wouldn't complain about having too many treasures. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen. "Hasn't the space seal been lifted? Why don't you dare to come out?" Zhang Jiasen didn't say anything. He stayed in the mayor's residence and didn't come out. He just stayed here. What could he do? The system said, "Someone is waiting for you. The incarnation of the time precept is waiting for you. And the judge is here too. Don't make a scene. It won't do you any good." Ning Shu said, "I won't make a scene. If I wanted to, I would have done it long ago." This Zhang Jiasen was like a mouse, either hiding at the bottom of the wall or in the sewer. It was very annoying. And for some reason, the grand uncle was loitering around. In short, it was very bad. Ning Shu felt that Zhang Jiasen's luck was a bit strange. Zhang Jiasen was a cockroach that couldn't be killed. The system said, "The main system has sent a message. Everyone who is loitering in the city of the law must return to the system space now. There is a problem in the city." Ning Shu asked, "What's the problem?" The system replied, "I don't know about that. It's a request from the main system." Apparently, Zhang Jiasen had also received the news. He looked at Ning Shu and smiled before disappearing from the city lord's mansion in an instant. Ning Shu could not stay in the Law City any longer and returned to the system space. Not long after, the main system sent a message saying that from now on, the Law City would no longer have law. The laws outside the city were also removed. Ning Shu was speechless. A Law City without laws was just an ordinary space. It was impossible to comprehend laws. If that was the case, then it would be like closing a powerful door for the majority of people. After all, the power of laws was still very strong. Not to mention that many souls did not comprehend the laws. Moreover, mission enforcers had to become super mission enforcers and pass the trial to be qualified to enter the law space. Damn, she still had so many laws that she had yet to comprehend. She had only scratched the surface of space. As for time and whatnot, she had yet to comprehend it. He had not even scratched the surface of time when it came to the two high-level laws. This was really bad news. Without laws, the Law City did not need the city lord to look after it at all times. Then, there would be no taxes. For a law incarnate, this was definitely a heart-wrenching pain. Although Ning Shu was no longer a law incarnate and did not need to look after the Law City, the taxes had nothing to do with her. However, she still had so many laws that she had yet to comprehend. Why was the Law City suddenly closed? Could it be that the situation in the Law Sea was already very serious? Ning Shu opened the Law Incarnate's chat group and saw a bunch of Law Incarnate crying and howling. They could not accept this at all. Some Law Incarnate were shouting and demanding an explanation from the organization. Why was it closed just like that? There was no warning at all. Ning Shu shrugged. He wanted to talk to the organization, but he could not get it. This Law City was probably a benefit given by the organization to give people a chance to comprehend the laws. However, if the organization did not provide it, there was nothing they could do. Now, they had to conserve all their energy in order to let the Law Sea linger on for a long time. Without the Law City, it would be even more difficult to comprehend the laws. They had to rely on themselves. They might not even be able to touch the edge for a lifetime. The existence of the Law City was equivalent to providing a convenient path to avoid detours. Ning Shu was not very shocked. Back then, the Law City was restricted, and now, there was no law power at all. This was within Ning Shu's expectations. When it really came, Ning Shu thought that the situation in the Law Sea was really serious. Ning Shu knew that there was a problem in the Law Sea, but many people did not know. It was related to their own interests, so these Law Incarnate went crazy. They lost so much tax for no reason, so they went crazy. Ning Shu suddenly felt a little schadenfreude. Zhang Jiasen, who had just become a Law Incarnate not long ago, now had no taxes. How distressing. However, even if it was distressing, it should be distressing for those mission enforcers who could not enter the Law City. It was equivalent to closing a powerful door. They could not comprehend a single law. Even if they became a super mission enforcer, they could not comprehend the laws. In short, this was something that made people cry out in grief. That was to say, Tai Shu might have appeared just now for this matter. Did he revoke the law power of all the Law City? It was a pity that she had not comprehended the law of time yet. There was nothing faster than being in close contact with the law. Even if the man in the Cheongsam was the law of time incarnate, it was useless to ask him about his comprehension. In short, the revocation of the law was a rather unfriendly thing for ordinary mission enforcers. What a pity. Of course, it was revoked. There was nothing that could be done about it. The Law Incarnate group was causing a ruckus, but they could not do anything. The organization did not give a reason for revoking the Law City. Ning Shu closed the Law Incarnate group and asked the man in the Cheongsam if he still wanted to look for treasures. The man in the Cheongsam, I'm in a bad mood, so I won't go now. He thought that the fine would be over, but now there was no tax. He could not live like this anymore. Without the law space was just an ordinary place. how many people would be willing to come here? Then the law space's business would suffer. The living environment was getting worse and worse. Ning Shu said, there's nothing we can do about it. If the organization closes, then so be it. Don't think too much. You're not the only one who has no money. You at least comprehended a law. Those who can't enter the law city and don't even comprehend the law are even more unlucky. Chapter 3283. The first to become a mission enforcer, of course, had more advantages than the people behind. The Sea of Law had existed for so long, and this organization had also existed for so long. How old must the first person to become a mission enforcer be? That's true, but this kind of loss was really painful. Originally, it was a place where super mission enforcers flocked to, but now it was estimated that not many people were willing to come here. Even if it was a restricted area before, the popular Sea of Law cities were full of people. For the Cheongsam man, not only was the tax gone, but the restaurant's business was also going to be gone. Ning Shu said, although it may not be as good as before, it definitely won't go bankrupt. This place could be a trading space with a complete business chain. Many mission enforcers would come here to buy things, especially since every city had an auction house. There were a lot of good things in the auction house. Especially some treasures found in the void world. These treasures couldn't grow in the ordinary living world. In fact, when Ning Shu wanted to find treasures in the void world, he felt that the treasures in the void world were more powerful than the treasures in the void world. Until now, Ning Shu hadn't encountered a baby treasure, and he hadn't even heard of it before. It seemed that only those who had lived for a long time in the organization and were particularly powerful people knew about this knowledge and resources. If he could find some baby treasures, it would be good. This kind of thing, whether he used it himself or sold it, would be a big fortune. It was just that the void world was too dangerous, and there were too many unknown races. She couldn't even kill locust-like insects, let alone those talented races. However, there were also a lot of treasures in the void world. If he found some, it would be best if he needed it, but if not, he would sell it. He would get some merit to raise the skeleton. He would get soul power from doing missions, and look for treasures in the void world. The Cheongsam man was not in a good mood, and he was not in the mood to look for treasures. Ning Shu thought for a moment and asked, "Can I ask you something?" "You don't have to answer, but I want to know." The Cheongsam man, "If you have any questions, just ask." "Ning Shu, I know you joined a faction. I want to know if it's young Master Ronghua's faction. If she belonged to that faction, her relationship with the Cheongsam man would be awkward." The man in the Cheongsam said firmly, "No, don't worry. But even if I'm from that faction, that's a conflict between you and that faction. I don't have any conflict with you, so it won't affect our relationship. Although I was born in a faction, the decisions and policies of the faction are not something I can control. Similarly, the faction cannot stop or decide who I associate with and what I associate with." Hearing the Cheongsam man say this, Ning Shu was relieved. So far, the Cheongsam man had been very reliable. If there really was a conflict, then they could talk about it. It wouldn't affect their relationship. Ning Shu asked, "Are we going to the Nihility world now?" Now that she had money, she could buy scrolls from the elders. "Alright, let's go now. If we don't get more food now, we will starve to death in the future." The man in the Cheongsam was clearly worried about the future. Ning Shu arrived at the Time City. When he came to the Time City again, he felt that the Time City was different. In the past, there was always a kind of pressure. It was the power of the law. But now, there was no such power. Ning Shu felt that his soul was about to float. It was like the moon that had no gravity. When he stepped on the ground, it felt soft. Ning Shu walked into the restaurant and said to the man in the Cheongsam, "Let's eat first." "Okay." The man in the Cheongsam said helplessly. There was a hint of melancholy between his eyebrows. He suddenly became a melancholy beautiful man. Ning Shu didn't have much resistance to such a change. After all, he didn't place all his hopes on the organization. Ning Shu said, "You don't have to worry. Even if the sky falls, there are tall people to hold it up. What are you worried about?" The higher-ups of the organization were definitely more worried than the man in the Cheongsam. The man in the Cheongsam frowned and said, "When the tree is about to fall, the insects, rats, snakes, and ants that rely on the tree to live will feel it first." That was true. After all, low-level people like them were the most sensitive. If there was any change in the organization, it would be like an earthquake or a tsunami to the people below. Ning Shu said, "No matter what happens in the future, let's take care of the present. If we are stronger now, we will have a higher chance of winning. A higher chance of survival might not be able to give birth to a new sea of law in the future." Ning Shu always felt that this matter was quite mysterious. The sea of law was something that was born from the heavens. Because of the energy body, it gave birth to a plane that could allow living beings to survive. Now, it was struggling at death's door. It was estimated that its energy was almost exhausted. What could he do? There was nothing he could do even if he was worried for nothing. The man in the Cheongsam asked the waiter to serve a table full of plates. Ning Shu was a little surprised. "Why are you suddenly so willing? There's no one here. If no one is here to eat, then let's eat by ourselves." Ning Shu looked at the restaurant's hall. Sure enough, there was no one here. Now that everyone was focused on the problem of the sea of law, how could they be in the mood to eat? Ning Shu did not stand on ceremony and directly picked up his chopsticks to eat. The man in the Cheongsam looked at Ning Shu's carefree appearance and could not help but say, "Don't you feel anything in your heart? You are the city lord of 3 Sea of Law. Why don't you have any reaction?" Ning Shu said, "I haven't collected taxes in a long time. Also, my nomological imprint has collapsed." Although he could use the power of the laws, he was no longer the embodiment of the laws. The man in the Cheongsam was speechless. No wonder she was so indifferent. It turned out that it had nothing to do with her. She did not lose anything, so she naturally did not care. Ning Shu said, "Don't frown. Your face has become like this. It's really ugly." The two of them ate so much that they finished all the food on the table and went to look for Elder Chi. Elder Chi was still sitting at the stall calmly, stroking his beard. When he saw that there was business, he was not in a hurry. Compared to the other worried people, such as the man in the Cheongsam, Elder Chi acted as if nothing had happened and asked, "Where are we going?" Ning Shu was not very familiar with these natural treasures and said, "What's popular recently?" "There's a lot. Recently, the body-strengthening fruit and the spirit stone are more popular. What do you think we should look for?" Ning Shu asked the man in the Cheongsam. The man in the Cheongsam said, "Are there any energy crystals?" "This thing, we don't have it so far." Elder Chi rummaged through the items and finally found a scroll. Usually, not many people come looking for this kind of thing. It's all supplied internally. Whether or not this world has it, you guys can try your luck. Chapter 3286. In the world of nothingness, some powers couldn't be used at all. Moreover, he didn't know if these tree roots could attack. If they did, it would be quite terrifying. After all, the entire underground was filled with tree roots, and these tree roots were very thick. It can be done. How do you know if you don't try? Life was about constantly creating and trying. Anyway, he wouldn't die. Relying on his immortality, he could do many things that he didn't dare to do before. The Cheongsam man could only risk his life to accompany the little girl. He condensed a weapon and then cut at the tree roots. The mine was very small. Someone had cut off the tree roots in the past to create such a hole. With so many tree roots, no one could tell which tree's roots they were. Ning Shu condensed an axe. It was the best to use an axe to cut tree roots. With some mental strength attached to the soul force, the weapon would be more aggressive. However, these tree roots were very hard. After cutting them, they came back with a clang. In the past, those people found mineral veins and even created a mine. It was really not easy. Ning Shu increased the output of his mental strength and used it to cut the tree roots. Under the effect of mental strength, the tree roots were cut off. However, they were embedded in the soil and ore and needed to be cut twice. It was really laborious. Ning Shu said, "I'll wait. We have to find someone who can dig. Not to mention that we have to work so hard. If we don't dig anything, wouldn't it be a waste of effort?" Ning Shu summoned Zhu Jun. The Chongsam man's expression was indifferent and numb to the skeletons that appeared out of thin air. After all, he had seen them before. In the battlefield in the void, the Chongsam man had seen skeletons before. However, that was the army of His Excellency. A mission enforcer could have skeletons. The Chongsam man's heart was very good. Were these skeletons hers or borrowed from His Excellency? Even if they were borrowed, they would definitely have to be returned. From the state of these two people, it was clear that they were on the same side. However, this was other people's private matter and related to their trump card. The Chongsam man couldn't ask rashly. Ning Shu asked Zhu Jun to temporarily take care of the baby for the earthworm and asked the earthworm to come over. "Zhu Jun, if there's anything, just say it. You don't have to call it over. We can do it." He didn't want to take care of the child at all. He would rather work. Children and whatnot were the most annoying and terrifying. Ning Shu said, "Let's call it over. It's good at drilling." Zhu Jun looked at the mine and said, "Are you going to deal with these roots? Find a few more skeletons and pull them out with your bare hands." Ning Shu thought he really liked this kind of violent method, but he couldn't waste his strength. He had to wait until he was sure if there was anything inside before he could forcefully remove it. The Chongsam man's eyelids twitched. This was a violent demolition team. However, it saved him a lot of effort. Therefore, the Chongsam man liked to cooperate with Ning Shu. Every time, he felt like he could win without doing anything. It couldn't get any better. And if there were any benefits, he would get a share. Zhu Jun could only return. Not long after, there were earthworms, no, eels now. The earthworm asked, "What are you doing?" Ning Shu told Earthworm about this matter. Earthworm was very unhappy. "Why do you always make me do these things?" Of course, it was to make the best use of everything. The earthworms began to drill into the soil, starting from the gaps between the roots. The Chongsam man looked at Earthworm curiously. What kind of creature was this? It looked slippery and ugly. Earthworm started to work. Ning Shu waited for Earthworm to come back. If there was something, he would continue to dig. If there was nothing, he would stay in the mine for a while and let the world tree absorb the remaining energy. The world tree in his palm was absorbing as much energy as possible. Ning Shu was very good. What was this? Was it the same as the energy body born in the void? The Chongsam man was a little far from Ning Shu. If he stood close, the two world trees would compete for energy. If he stood a little further away, the two world trees wouldn't compete for energy. The energy was thin. Looking at the world tree in Ning Shu's hand, the Chongsam man was a little puzzled. His world tree was a small seedling, and the other party's was just a seed. How could it grow so fast now? It didn't make sense at all. Could it be that his world tree had absorbed energy before? The man in the Chongsam sighed and touched the tree of world in his palm. He felt that his child was a disappointment. But what could he do? It was his child. If it absorbed as much energy as possible, it might achieve a qualitative change. Ning Shu saw that the Chongsam man was staring at him with resentment. He couldn't help but ask, why are you looking at me like that? She had never lied to the Cheongsam man. The Cheongsam man said, nothing. Ning Shu's feet moved, and a pile of soil arched up. The earthworm came out. It shook the soil off its body. Ning Shu quickly asked, how's the investigation going? There were too many roots. His spiritual power couldn't penetrate them. The earthworm said, it depends on what you're looking for. It's a crystal with energy. Anyway, it's something that contains energy, no matter what state it is in. The earthworm said, oh, I found a dark river. That river seems to have some energy. A dark river. Damn, the energy of a river was so powerful. Did the river have energy, or did the river contain something with energy? The Cheongsam man asked, what did it say? The earthworm couldn't speak, so the Cheongsam man couldn't hear what it was saying. Ning Shu said, I found a dark river. It said that it has energy. Cultivating creatures were very sensitive to energy. They could sense any kind of energy. The Cheongsam man was stunned. A dark river? He thought that there might be a mineral vein or nothing, but he didn't expect it to be a dark river. Now that he thought about it, it was normal. Plants needed water and sunlight. Even if there was no water and sunlight, plants needed energy. Ning Shu said to the earthworm, lead the way. Take the shortest path. Ning Shu summoned the skeletons. There were more skeletons this time, and he needed them to help him get the roots. It would take a long time for the two of them to get the roots. The skeletons were all holding weapons. The earthworm led the way, and the skeletons were handling the roots. Ning Shu and the Cheongsam man walked behind. It didn't take much effort. Ning Shu looked at the skeletons with love. The more merit these skeletons ate, the stronger they became. At the same time, they became stronger. They would definitely grow into violent skeletons in the future. This kind of work was easy for the skeletons. In the future, they would process more star stones and earn more money for the skeletons to eat. Although the earthworm walked closer, it still took a long time to process. The two of them followed behind for a long time, /BK. Chapter 3287. With the earthworm leading the way, they finally found the underground river. The underground river wasn't big. It was calm and flowing slowly. The water vapor around it was full of energy. Ning Shu reached out and touched the water. A force was transmitted to his body from the water. At the same time, the world tree was absorbing the energy crazily. The underground river was underground, so it was impossible to see what was at the bottom of the river or what was dangerous. The world tree wanted to leave Ning Shu's body and jump into the river to absorb the energy. Leave the soul. Ning Shu didn't control the world tree anymore. Since it wanted to jump into the river, then so be it. The world tree floated out of Ning Shu's palm to the surface of the river and took root in the underground river. The Cheongsam man was in a tug-of-war with the world tree. The world tree wanted to leave his body, but the Cheongsam man was worried that something would happen to it. Most importantly, if it left, could it return to his body? Seeing Ning Shu casually let the world tree out like a child throwing a stone into the river, he didn't care at all. The Cheongsam man asked, "You're just going to let it in?" Ning Shu asked back, "What else can I do?" "It can go in if it wants to." This way, the world tree could absorb more energy by itself. Seeing that the Cheongsam man didn't put the world tree in the underground river, Ning Shu was a little puzzled. "What are you doing? Why don't you let the world tree absorb the energy?" The Cheongsam man. He felt really depressed. Well, the world tree was now what the Cheongsam man relied on. The more he cared about it, the more he was worried about it and the more he couldn't let go. It was just like how the peerless martial arts were to Ning Shu. If he didn't care about it, he wouldn't be so worried. Ning Shu wasn't so worried about the peerless martial arts either. It was good that he had it. If he didn't have it, he would just treat it as something he had to lose in life. It wasn't a big deal. Ning Shu was very open now. It didn't matter if he had the world tree or not. The Cheongsam man thought for a moment. It made sense. If he had it, the world tree wouldn't be able to absorb the energy freely. Her world tree was rooted in the river, and there was already a lot of water vapor around it. It seemed that the energy was concentrated around the world tree. The man in the Cheongsam no longer hesitated. He let the world tree leave his body and take root in the underground river. However, the two trees were quite far away from each other to avoid competing for energy with each other. The two of them had nothing to do, so they began to study the river. Since it was a river, there must be a source. Where was the source? Perhaps the source of the energy would be even denser, or there might even be energy crystals. If that was the case, then it would be worth it. Ning Shu and the Cheongsam man looked at each other. The Cheongsam man took the lead and said, "Why don't we go and find the source?" Speaking of finding the source, Ning Shu thought of the spirit stone. He had also found the source in the same way, and then found a big problem. He was a little annoyed by people like the spiritual stone. They were strong and willful. He could do whatever he wanted. He was born and raised by the earth. His birth point was the end point of others. Moreover, he did not listen to others at all. He only thought about what he wanted to do. He was comfortable, but when it came to her, he felt like exploding on the spot. Ning Shu could not afford to offend a person who pointed a knife at her at any time. Most importantly, he was born to be superior to others. It seemed that it was an honor to follow him. There was no one related to him at all. Why should he tolerate him? He did not want such an honor. The Cheongsam man obviously remembered that time. He suppressed his desire to find the source and said, "Obviously, the world tree is absorbing energy. Let's wait until it has absorbed enough energy. If something goes wrong, retreat immediately." Ning Shu nodded. That was the way it should be. He was not afraid of encountering any powerful creatures. He was only afraid of intelligent creatures that insisted on pestering him. Ning Shu was afraid of such things. The earthworm lay beside Ning Shu and asked, "Can I go back now?" "Don't be so anxious. There's still a while. By the way, why don't you go along the river and see what the source looks like?" The earthworm was very unhappy. "Why are you so troublesome?" "I'm going back." Ning Shu asked, "Why are you in such a hurry to go back?" The earthworm said, "I'm worried about the child. God knows if that skeleton can take good care of him. Besides, he's a skeleton. His whole body is hard. How could such a person take care of the child? What if he was too strong and hurt the child's skin?" Now the child was white and fat. If he used a little strength, there would be red marks on his skin. How could these violent skeletons know the severity of the situation? Ning Shu said with relief, "You're really a qualified mother, or a qualified father." The earthworm spat and despised Ning Shu. "Who's like you? You have a child for no reason and then throw the child away. Liren was like this, and now this child is like this." Ning Shu said, "I know you are a person full of maternal love, so I'm very assured of you. How about 10 merit grains to find the source?" 10 merit grains were more than 10,000 merit points. She couldn't even get that much from a mission. The earthworm was troubled and shook her head. "No, I want to go back." Ning Shu said, 11. The earthworm reluctantly shook her head. "I still want to go back." Ning Shu said, "Okay, 12. Go to the source. If there's any danger, retreat immediately. Don't fight it head-on." The earthworm nodded and started following the river in the opposite direction. Ning Shu propped up his chin and watched as the world tree absorbed the energy and expanded her consciousness. Her spiritual power hadn't taken shape yet. However, Ning Shu wasn't in a hurry. If it didn't take shape, it meant that it had great potential in the future. There was no need to rush. The most important thing now was to expand the consciousness. The bigger her consciousness, the better. That way, she could hold more spiritual power in the future. Once her spirit took shape, her spiritual power would experience a qualitative leap. It couldn't be better. Gradually, Link's world tree was surrounded by energy. As the world tree absorbed the energy, its trunk and branches grew bigger and bigger. The bigger it got, the more energy it absorbed. In the end, the two world trees started fighting for the energy. Ning Shu and the man in the Cheongsam watched. As for how much they could take, it depended on the world trees. For now, Ning Shu's world tree had the upper hand. After all, it had developed slightly before. Later, the advantage would increase. The man in the Cheongsam didn't speak. He just sighed. There was nothing he could do. The two world trees grew bigger and bigger. They couldn't grow any longer. If they grew any longer, they would reach the ceiling of the cave. The branches of the two trees intertwined. As if fighting for sunlight, they kept growing. Chapter 3288. The earthworm came back and crawled out of the soil. Ning Shu quickly asked, "How was it? Did you find anything?" The earthworm shook off the soil on its body and said, "Nothing special. It's just a pool of spring water. Nothing else." Ning Shu asked, "Is there more energy in the spring water?" Since it was the source of the spring, did the energy in the underground river come from it? The earthworm said, "There's no energy. It's just an ordinary spring." Ning Shu was stunned. Why was there no energy at all? This was not scientific. Ning Shu could not help but ask, where did the energy in the underground river come from? This was strange. He had always felt that there should be energy at the source, but there was no energy at all. Really? What do you mean by real? Go and see for yourself, the earthworm said angrily. Ning Shu touched his chin and pondered. Where did the energy come from? There was no energy in the spring. How would I know? You should pay me for my service. 12 grams of merit points. The earthworm stretched out its tail like a snake and asked for something. Ning Shu took out 12 merit grains and gave them to the earthworm. She wanted the earthworm to get used to this kind of transaction so that it could do things more efficiently in the future. More than 10 merit grains were nothing to Ning Shu. Another person gave a few merit grains to the skeletons, and the skeletons also contributed. Then I'll go back, the earthworm asked uncertainly. Ning Shu said, I'll give you 20 merit grains. The earthworm looked at Ning Shu warily. What do you want me to do? Ning Shu said, nothing. I just want you to find a source of energy. If you find it, there will be a lot of benefits. The earthworm shook its head. I don't know. This place is too big. I can't find it at all. Besides, I have to go back. The earthworm missed its baby at home. Ning Shu frowned and said, why can't you find it? As long as there's energy, you can definitely find it. Can't you sense the energy? The earthworm sneered. Then why can't you sense it? Ning Shu said, because I don't know how to drill. The earthworm was speechless. So infuriating. The earthworm said, I don't think it's the effect of the spring. It's the river that gathers the surrounding energy. It has nothing to do with the spring. It's just like the soul stone mine. It's formed after absorbing soul power. It's not a place that has soul power to begin with. There are also spirit chi veins. They are also formed by absorbing spirit chi from places with abundant spirit chi. Ning Shu looked at the earthworm. What you said makes sense. I didn't expect you to be so knowledgeable. Earthworm, he must be mocking it. Ning Shu let the earthworm go back. He saw that the earthworm was eager to return home, as if someone was waiting for him at home. Dal was still a baby and didn't know anything. After the earthworm left, the Cheongsam man asked, "Did you find anything?" Ning Shu shook his head. "I didn't find it. There was only the mouth of the spring, but there was no energy. It should be that when the underground river was flowing, it gathered the surrounding energy." The Cheongsam man was a little disappointed, but that was all. After all, when he bought this world, he didn't expect to find it. Now that he found an underground river, it was already very good. For the world tree to absorb for so long, there was actually a lot of energy in the river. Ning Shu believed the earthworm's words. Besides, there was no need for the earthworm to lie to him. They would have to deal with each other in the future. Since there was no harvest from the mouth of the spring, Ning Shu let the skeletons go back. He waited for the world tree to finish absorbing the energy. He didn't know if it could finish absorbing it. If it couldn't, Ning Shu planned to remember the location of the space node of this world. When the world tree absorbed and digested the energy, it would absorb it again. The world tree absorbed and its speed slowed down. Obviously, it had reached its limit. Even if there was still energy in the river, it had reached its absorption limit. When the world tree couldn't absorb anymore, it would return to its previous weak state. A grain of sand was a world. The size of the outside didn't determine how big the inside was. Ning Shu took back the world tree. It was still the same as before. The world tree returned to Ning Shu's palm and was successfully taken back. The man in the Cheongsam put away the world tree and heaved a sigh of relief. He had finally taken it back. He had been afraid that the world tree wouldn't be able to be taken back. This thing was related to his future, so it was inevitable that he would be stingy. He had no choice but to pin all his hopes on this. The man in the Cheongsam asked, "What do we do next? Do we still need to investigate the energy?" Ning Shu shook his head. "No, there's no need. Let's wait for the world tree to digest it. They would come again next time." The man in the Cheongsam understood instantly. Just like in the world of the kidney-strengthening fruit, he would remember the location of the space node. Then, he could enter this place in the future. The man in the Cheongsam said, "Bring me next time." Ning Shu said, "Come if you want, but I only have one request. Don't tell anyone about this." Although there was no wall in the world that didn't leak, they would keep it a secret for as long as possible. Speaking of which, they were also poor. They were all picking up the leftovers of others. However, there were also benefits to this. They could dig deeper and dig out better things. Everyone had a blind spot. If they persevered a little longer, they might be able to find something better. Of course, there was also the possibility that there would be nothing at all. The man in the Cheongsam wanted to sigh. "I would like to come, but my understanding of space hasn't reached the level of building a space channel, so I can't come here myself." Ning Shu nodded. The space law was really difficult. She was about to cry because of this law. It was extremely difficult. "At least you are the embodiment of the time law," Ning Shu comforted him. "The time law can't let me go wherever I want. There are restrictions. Time could be said to be invincible in terms of avoiding many injuries. It could even form a small area of rapid time flow, 1 time, 10 times, or 100 times faster. How could ordinary people withstand the ravages of time? In almost 10 minutes, one could become an old man or an old lady. It was not a myth that one would age instantly. Time was a very powerful weapon. Nothing could escape the punishment of time. Therefore, the man in the Cheongsam was quite powerful. Now that the law city was gone, it was not as convenient to comprehend the laws as before. Ning Shu also wanted to sigh. "I also have a lot of laws that I haven't comprehended yet, especially time. Why don't you teach me the time law and I'll teach you the space law?" The man in the Cheongsam nodded. "We'll talk about it later. I definitely want to comprehend the space law." Previously, when the Lost City was still around, he wanted to take his time to comprehend it. There was no rush. Who would have thought that the Lost City would be gone in such a short time? Chapter 3289. She couldn't get close to the laws anymore. Comprehending the laws required one to comprehend wisps of power from heaven and earth. It wasn't as convenient as being in the law space, where she could come into contact with the laws anytime and anywhere. Previously, she felt that the space law was more difficult, so she wanted to slowly comprehend it. Sigh. Ning Shu felt that if it weren't for the star stones, which could be used to store the law of nothingness, he might not have risked his life to comprehend the law of space. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to comprehend the space law until now. In the space law city, her comprehension was already extremely slow. If she were to capture the power of the laws between heaven and earth, it would be even more difficult. It could only be said that learning early was better than learning late. Should we go back now or continue to stroll around this world? The Cheongsam man asked. This world seems to be free of danger. There were only plants and no animals. The system reminded at the right time, Ning Shu, you should do the mission. There's a backlog of missions. When Ning Shu heard this, he said to the Cheongsam man, let's not stroll around. There's plenty of time in the future. I'm going to do the mission. My soul is weak. The most important thing now was to increase the strength of his soul. With the help of the kidney-strengthening fruit, his soul would become reinforced concrete. Ning Shu directly marked the space node of this river. The next time he appeared, he would appear directly next to this underground river. It also saved him the time of running around and looking everywhere. Ning Shu and the Cheongsam man returned to the system space. Ning Shu still remembered what he had promised the system before. He took out a kidney-strengthening fruit and asked the system, how should I give it to you? Where are you? Just give it to me, the system said. The kidney-strengthening fruit in Ning Shu's hand floated up and then passed through the wall of the space system. Ning Shu was very surprised. He walked over and touched the wall. He wanted to pass through, but it was impossible. Ning Shu asked, are there two rooms in the system space? You're here, and I'm over there. The system said, yes, the mission taker and the system have their own space. They don't disturb each other. Okay, he didn't know there was a room next door. Zhengqin used to stay next door. The system said, thank you for the fruit. Ning Shu said casually, don't worry about it. There were plenty. However, Ning Shu didn't finish his sentence. Ning Shu asked curiously, I want to know how your system became so powerful. Did you absorb wild systems? Previously, Zhengqin had said that the system needed to evolve and become stronger, so she had done many system missions in the past. The system said, when you reach a certain level of achievement, the main system will reward you with merit points. Then, you will undergo merit body sculpting and walk another path. Ning Shu understood. So the system was just a novice village for these systems. Once the system was qualified, there would be other arrangements. Since they could absorb merit, then. Will you join the army? Only the souls of soldiers would be able to absorb merit points. Mission enforcers would not be able to absorb merit points because they had to complete missions and could not have too much merit points on them. The system said, probably. It seemed like the system had its own powerful connections. The organization had already arranged everything. Ning Shu was a little surprised. Since you can absorb merit, why do you still need to eat the kidney-strengthening fruit? The system said, eating the kidney-strengthening fruit is equivalent to building a foundation. It's better to eat it every time. Ning Shu felt more comfortable talking to the system. At least, the system would answer her questions appropriately, unlike in the past when it was always perfunctory. If it really couldn't, the system would just say, you don't have the authority to know. This sentence directly shut her up. At that time, she was just an ant. After all, humans didn't care about reasons. Who was Jingqing? She was born from the world and crawled out of the sea of laws. Why would she care about a lowly human like her? If she could be perfunctory, she would be perfunctory. Even if she wanted to have a good relationship with her, she couldn't be friends. Why? She didn't even treat her as someone on the same level. She didn't even have the chance to turn an enemy into a friend. Because she didn't have the right. Although she was as lowly as dust, fortunately, she wasn't twisted like a maggot. Now, the system could at least talk and communicate properly. After chatting for a while, Ning Shu began to observe her world tree. The world tree, which had absorbed energy, seemed to be dormant now. Now, it was motionless and wouldn't appear in her palm. After this, the world tree would probably undergo a qualitative change. Ning Shu was very curious about the energy in that world that could make the plants grow so luxuriantly. And it wasn't the power of the wood law. If it was, she would be able to sense it very quickly. What was this energy? Could souls be used for themselves? Was it the same as the energy in the void? Ning Shu asked the system. The system directly said, "Sorry, this is beyond my scope of knowledge. You can ask the main system. The main system should know." Such top-secret knowledge was only known to the upper echelons. She probably still had to pay for it. It would be strange if the main system could answer her rashly. If she wanted to know the answer, she had to obediently go to the consultation room and spend money to ask. Ning Shu was too lazy to ask. As long as it was good for the world, it was fine. And she might even get free information from the Chongsam man. After all, the Chongsam man had a faction behind him, and it was unknown how big the faction was. She felt that the Chongsam man, an incarnation of the time law, was like a peripheral figure. She probably didn't have a high ranking in the organization. Once the Chongsam man built the world and the world tree succeeded, her status would probably be raised. If the Chongsam man could get any information, she would share it with him. If the Chongsam man couldn't get it, she would go directly to the consultation room to ask. She would earn back the star stones by processing it twice. Ning Shu took out the kidney-strengthening fruit and began to chew. He chewed until his teeth hurt. He asked the system, "Can you chew it?" The system said, "I can't chew it." Ning Shu asked, "Then how do you eat it?" The system said, "I use my tongue to lick it." Ning Shu was speechless. Imagining this scene, it felt really wretched. It was disillusioned in an instant. Ning Shu smiled and said, "Can I? I can even lick it." The system said, "Can I? It will melt in your mouth. Do you think it's sugar? How can it melt in your mouth? How can a lump of iron melt in your mouth?" It was only now that Ning Shu felt that the system was a little mundane. It had always been businesslike before. However, she seemed to have been holding it in her mouth before. She cut it into pieces and then held it in her mouth. Alright, they were both stupid. Let's not talk about each other. However, she didn't use her tongue to lick it. It was unsightly. Ning Shu couldn't get rid of the image of the system holding a fruit and licking the kidney-strengthening fruit. Ning Shu said, "Stop licking. I have a knife here. Cut it into pieces and hold it in your mouth." Chapter 3291. This, Ning Shu always felt that she was being despised, or even despised by a peerless martial art. Was what he was doing the opposite of the ultimate martial arts evolution direction? So the ultimate martial art didn't let him in. Did the ultimate martial art have such advanced intelligence? The system said, "Someone is waiting for you over there. He's asking if you were swallowed by the law of nothingness." Ning Shu said, "Bullshit, he was the one who was swallowed." No, Zhengqing was the one who was swallowed. Ning Shu put the ultimate martial art into the ring space and jumped back to his previous position in the void. The Grand Elder was standing in the void, looking at Ning Shu expressionlessly. You were in such a hurry to find someone, but then you disappeared. Have some integrity. Ning Shu said, there was a problem in the beginning, but there's no problem for now. You came for nothing. Ning Shu said, in order to express my gratitude, let me see Jingqing. If I provoke Jingqing, I might be able to speed up the law of nothingness's swallowing of Jingqing. Jingqing had always thought that she was dead, but now she had appeared in front of him. Were you surprised? Were you surprised? The Grand Elder rolled his eyes at Ning Shu, his glasses glowing with a cold luster. He said, you want to see Jingqing that much? What was he thinking? Of course, I want to see Jingqing very much. After all, we've been together for so long, and we have some feelings for each other. The Grand Elder snorted. No. He was about to leave when Ning Shu immediately reached out his hand. Wait. The Grand Elder looked at him. Ning Shu said, at least give me the location of the space node. If there's a problem with the law of nothingness in the future, I can find it immediately and deal with it. The Grand Elder laughed. If one more person knew the location, Jingqing would have a better chance of escaping. Who knew if some people's brains would be filled with sulfuric acid and try to get him out? Ning Shu, don't keep laughing. Say something. If you tell me the location of my spatial node, I won't tell anyone else. And you can rest assured that with my relationship with Jingqing, I won't do anything. Besides, there's nothing between us. Whether or not Jingqing had fused with the law of nothingness had nothing to do with her. No, if Jingqing had fused with the law of nothingness, it would be very disadvantageous for her. Thus, it was best for Jingqing to stay within the law of nothingness. 100 years, 1 year, 10,000 years. For a long, long time. If Jingqing was fused with the law of nothingness, it had nothing to do with her. After all, she wasn't the one who pressed Jingqing inside. Jingqing could blame anyone but her. Grand Uncle frowned and stretched out his hand. Give me that world. I'll deal with it directly. She was so annoying every day, so it was better to solve it once and for all. Ning Shu immediately took a step back and said, that won't do. It's mine. Since it's yours, then don't trouble me whenever something happens. If you can't deal with it, you have to keep it. Grand Uncle frowned, looking a little irritated. Obviously, he was very irritated by the person in front of him. Ning Shu felt that something was wrong and immediately retreated far away. There won't be any trouble in the future. Ning Shu said and jumped away. He didn't necessarily need the organization's help. And if there was a problem, he could directly take it into the void. There was nothing to be afraid of. For some powerful races, the law of nothingness wasn't considered powerful. Jingqing had been soaked in it for so long. Why hadn't he been assimilated? Ning Shu's iron head hit the spatial wall. The surrounding space was sealed, and now she couldn't get out. Ning Shu looked at Grand Uncle and asked, what's the meaning of this? Are you going to rob me? Grand Uncle said, you're leaving just like that. Ning Shu blinked. Is there anything else? I can deal with the world myself. I've dealt with it. Deal with star stones for free 500 times. That's the reward this time. Ning Shu didn't have much to say. Although he had to deal with it himself, he had to pay Grand Uncle for making a trip. However, the service attitude wasn't good. It wasn't as good as Sang Liang's attitude. Could he give a bad review if he didn't come for a long time? Ning Shu just said, got it. I'll deal with it. Can I leave now? Ning Shu looked at Grand Uncle warily. This person had always said that he would destroy her will. It was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't kill her now, although she didn't have anything good on her. Grand Uncle couldn't be bothered to talk. He flashed and left. The surrounding space was also removed. How much was 500 times? Ning Shu counted with his fingers. He could deal with 500 to 600 times each time. He would treat it as a free transaction. Fortunately, the law of nothingness wasn't a problem for the time being. As for whether there was a way, Ning Shu didn't know at all. After all, he couldn't even enter the world now. He didn't know what was going on inside. Ning Shu didn't stay in the void and return to the system space. Looking at the peerless martial arts, he felt very tired. The situation of the peerless martial arts was like a bomb. And he didn't know how to deal with this bomb. Ning Shu said to the system, "Let's go do the mission." Now that the peerless martial arts seemed safer, there was nothing to do for the time being. The system said, "It might not work. The main system wants you to deal with the star stones now." Ning Shu was speechless. What kind of speed was this? He had just said that there would be 500 free transactions. As soon as he returned to the system space, the main system asked him to deal with the star stones. It felt like not many people were willing to deal with this thing. Otherwise, Granduncle wouldn't have caught a person and offered 500 free transactions. He had no choice but to ask for help from others. Ning Shu could only say, "Then go deal with the star stones." Ning Shu built a space channel according to the location of the space node and rushed to the place where the plane was damaged. As soon as Ning Shu appeared, many people focused their eyes on him. Ning Shu was a little puzzled. "Why are you looking at me?" He heard that the person who took over this time was someone he didn't know and hadn't seen before. When he saw Ning Shu coming, he handed the item to Ning Shu. He started to feel distressed when he started to deal with it. This person was standing next to the pearl and didn't leave. Ning Shu looked at him and asked, "What's the matter? You don't know me?" he asked. Ning Shu asked back, "Should I know you?" It was the first time they met. The big shots who dealt with fragments or star stones were more or less familiar, but he really didn't know this person. "Isn't it your fortune? People like us who are so busy have to start dealing with the star stones." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. Was he looking for trouble? Ning Shu shook his head and said, "You guys are not dealing with the star stones because of me. It's clearly the organization's decision. How can you blame me?" Chapter 3292. Besides, you should go to the Great Gate Planet for the cause of this matter. It was the Great Gate Planet who dragged you down. You are all busy, but others are not. The other party was here to find trouble, so Ning Shu naturally had to show a noble and cold attitude. The man looked at Ning Shu. "You are as sharp-tongued as the Great Gate Planet said." "I am sharp-tongued. If you don't come up, why would I bite you?" Ning Shu dealt with the star stone and ignored his existence. The man said, "Are you interested in joining our faction?" Ning Shu, burp, what kind of twist was this? Why did he want to join a faction now? Ning Shu said, "I won't join a faction." Not to mention the friction with the Great Gate Planet, once he really joined a faction, would he have to hand in the Holy Whip? Joining a faction meant that he would be protected by the faction, and at the same time, he would have to fight for the interests of the faction. The Holy Whip in his hand was something that the Great Gate Planet had always wanted to take back. The Great Gate Planet was very persistent. They wanted to take it away from him again and again. It seemed that they would not give up. After joining such an organization, there would still be a gap, and it would not be easy for everyone to get along. Now, this faction had changed its strategy of conciliation, using both soft and hard methods. The man said, "I am not a member of the same faction as the Great Gate Planet." Ning Shu, then why did you look like you were here to find trouble? Since the other party was not an enemy, Ning Shu's attitude was much better. He showed a formulaic smile and said, "I have not thought of joining any faction for the time being. After all, people like me don't like to be controlled. Who knew what would be asked to do if he joined an organization? Since he had joined a faction, he had to do his best for the interests of the faction. Just like young Master Ronghua and the Great Gate Planet. Once something happened, he had to take the lead and run for the interests of the organization. She was free now. Except for being slightly controlled by the organization, she could go wherever she wanted. She could do whatever she wanted. Joining a faction meant that she had more responsibilities. He wanted to be a free wanderer. The man said, "The factions won't control you. In fact, filming is just a way to exchange information. It's just a group of people coming together. It's not as complicated as you think." Ning Shu curiously asked, "Why are you looking for me?" Other than the fact that the greedy Wolf Star needed manpower and wanted her to join the organization as a subordinate, why did this person do that? The man looked at Ning Shu's vigilant look and asked, "What are you afraid of?" Ning Shu shook his head. "I'm not afraid. I'm just annoyed." Previously, it was the greedy Wolf Star. Then, Ronghua Gongzi came over to snatch the fruit. Now, it was the giant Gate Star. He pulled aside the vines and brought out the melon. The man said, "Isn't joining a faction also a way to save one's life? People from the same faction will stick together and keep each other warm." Save her life? She didn't need to save her life. Even if they wanted to erase her will, it wouldn't be easy. How could they kill her? Why couldn't he die? Ning Shu nodded. "I know, but I still have to decline your invitation. Also, I want to ask why you want to invite me to join the faction." The man said, "The faction also needs to absorb new blood and strong people. Of course, it doesn't just absorb strong people. It also needs to train people." Ning Shu asked, "So you decided to train me?" The man shook his head. "No, it's just that your strength has reached the level that the faction can absorb. Of course, there are benefits to joining the faction." "I see." Should she applaud at this moment? This meant that her strength had been recognized. Actually, it didn't matter if others recognized her or not. What was important was that she didn't always meet someone who thought that she was easy to bully and wanted to rub her fur. Rub people's fur until they exploded. If a tiger doesn't show its power, do you think I'm Hello Kitty? Ning Shu smiled. It was the kind of smile that had to be twisted and pretentious. She said, "Thank you for thinking so highly of me. Although I won't join the organization, we can have friendly interactions." As long as they didn't come to find trouble with her, Ning Shu didn't need to make their relationship bad. The friendship between gentlemen was as clear as water. She was probably already on the organization's dangerous list now. The kind that was somewhat uncontrollable. Seeing that Ning Shu wasn't willing to join the faction, the man couldn't say anything more. Forcing people to join the faction like they were hungry and thirsty made the faction seem like it had no dignity. Moreover, the other party's attitude was good. If he continued to force them, they might even become enemies. It wasn't in his interest to become enemies for no reason. Then let's keep in touch in the future. But I have to start processing the star stones now. We can meet when the shift changes. Let me know when you've thought it through. The man didn't stay any longer and left directly. Ning Shu started to process the star stones. Actually, there were many people in the organization who could process the star stones. In the end, only a few people were busy. The system's voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. He said, "Actually, you can hang your name in a faction. You think too much of a faction. It's actually a place for information exchange. If there's any movement in the organization, there's always a source of information. The faction can know immediately and take countermeasures. There's only benefits." Ning Shu shook his head. "I don't really care about the movement in the organization. No matter what the organization did, it didn't matter if they got the news in advance." He heard that they were no longer focused on the organization. It was still the same sentence. If the organization collapsed one day, or if the sea of laws was no longer there, she would still be alive. If she couldn't die, what was there to worry about? The system said, I'm just giving you a suggestion. It's up to you whether you want to accept it or not. Thank you for your trouble. At least the system said these words for her own good. She didn't accept it, but she received the intention. Ning Shu hummed a little tune and started to process the star stones. Although he didn't get paid for it, when he thought about his peerless martial arts, he didn't have so much conflict in his heart. People had to learn to find joy in the midst of pain. Ning Shu dealt with the star stone in one go, and then rushed to the next place where the plane was damaged. The system said solemnly, "Come back quickly. Is there something wrong with your world again?" What? Ning Shu didn't react. Was there something wrong with the world again? The system said, "It's that book. Now the unified space is about to be frozen." Ning Shu. _ Oh my God, how long has it been? But she just came to process the star stones and no one came to take over her shift. Ning Shu realized that in the future, if he wanted to process the star stones frequently, he would need to find a partner to take over his shift. If there were any urgent matters, he could ask her to take over for a while. Ning Shu quickly applied for a shift change with the main system. The main system of course rejected. Ning Shu repeatedly explained that there was something wrong with his world and he had to go back to deal with it. Oh no, she was like a child herding sheep. Even she didn't believe that there was something wrong with the world again. Chapter 3293. The main system didn't object to Ning Shu's application, but it asked Ning Shu to find someone to change shifts. No one was willing to do work like handling star stones. Now they had to do it for someone else. Although they would be paid, at this level, who would care about such a small amount of money? They didn't want to do it. The main system meant that if Ning Shu could find someone to change shifts, he could leave. If he couldn't, he could continue to do it. Anyway, he couldn't stop dealing with star stones. So many planes had collapsed. Once it stopped, everyone who dealt with the damaged planes would have to stop. So many people were waiting for him. How could it be possible? Find him himself? What if he wasn't familiar with them? Ning Shu went through his mind several times to find someone he knew who could deal with star stones. He found and he said he had something to do and was not free. He also said he had something to do. Ning Shu said to Uncle Zhang, "I have kidney strengthening fruit." Uncle Zhang, "I have it too." Ning Shu, "Okay, these two couldn't do it." He had to find senior uncle. It seemed that he had been blacklisted. Ning Shu applied to remove the blacklisting status. How could he contact someone like this? Communication was very important. The main system didn't say anything this time and directly removed the blacklisting status. Ning Shu said to senior uncle, "Please come and take over my shift. There's a problem with my world, so I have to go back and deal with it." Senior uncle. Get lost. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. How could he be so direct? Ning Shu, there's really a problem with my world, really. Really, I'm not lying to you. Now I have to go back and deal with it. He didn't know what the system space was like now. But he couldn't leave like this. Ning Shu contacted senior uncle while dealing with star stones. She really wanted to cry in the wind. Ning Shu then said to the system, "You should tell the main system as well. The main system trusts you more than me. I'm really not lying." The system said, "I've already said that the main system has already received feedback, but you'll still have to rely on yourself to find the person who can handle the stellar stones." Ning Shu was speechless. This was truly an abominable job. Why was no one willing to do it? Ning Shu contacted the senior uncle again. "Okay, come over and change shifts." Next time, I'll do it for free 500 times. Ning Shu said, come quickly. As Ning Shu spoke, he began to melt the star stone. After the planes were linked together, the Grand Elder came. Ning Shu immediately smiled and said, thank you. The Grand Elder was indifferent to Ning Shu's smile. 1,000 times. Ning Shu said innocently, what do you mean by 1,000 times? Free 1,000 times. Raising the price on the spot, but Ning Shu really needed time. All right. Ning Shu immediately returned to the system space. As soon as he entered, he felt a bone-chilling cold that could freeze his soul. The entire system space was covered in a layer of frost, and the spirit water in the spirit pool had already turned into a thick layer of ice. The fish inside were frozen and motionless. She wondered if he had frozen to death. Ning Shu quickly took out the fire pearl, hoping that the fire pearl would be able to dispel the cold. The entire space system became extremely humid. Ning Shu quickly took the water out of the system space. Even so, the space continued to freeze. What should he do? As soon as Ning Shu came in contact with the peerless martial art, half of his arm was already frozen. The frost was spreading at a very fast speed, and soon it would cover his entire body. Ning Shu directly broke his own arm. His frozen arm shattered with a single blow, and the ice shards fell to the ground. It was a pity that he lost the soul power of an arm. Now, he couldn't even touch the peerless martial art. Once he touched it, he would be frozen into an ice pillar. Once he touched it, it would shatter. Ning Shu hugged the fire pearl and went overboard. He stared blankly at the peerless martial art. Although the surroundings were frozen, the peerless martial art was not. As soon as the ice and fire came in contact, mist immediately evaporated. Then, there was dripping water everywhere. It was extremely humid. Fortunately, other than the freezing, there was no other danger. The system asked, have you thought of how to deal with it? The system space is also made of energy. If you continue to consume it like this, it will damage your consciousness. Ning Shu, what can I do? I am also very desperate. I can only look at it now. Other than that, what else can I do? Now, wait. Other than the cold, there seemed to be no other situation. It all depended on when this cold would pass. The peerless martial art could not be touched at all. The fire pearl was so hot. Only by hugging it now could his soul not be frozen. How could he do the mission in this state? The outside was frozen. He did not know what was going on inside. What was the principle that caused the peerless martial art to be frozen? Logically speaking, the peerless martial art should not have frozen energy. There was no way to enter it now. Ning Shu held his chin and looked at the peerless martial art. He felt that his whole body was not too good. He felt that he could not leave the peerless martial art in the system space. Who knew if something would happen at any time? This way, he would not be able to concentrate on the mission. If he did the mission, he might be notified that there was a problem with the peerless martial art halfway. Could he still ignore the mission? Ning Shu felt that he should leave the peerless martial art in the dark river. If something really happened, the peerless martial art could also absorb energy. Other than the Cheongsam man, no one else had discovered the dark river. Moreover, the Cheongsam man could not go to that world alone now. His understanding of the spatial laws was not deep enough. Ning Shu left the fire pearl in the system space and left. He went to the consultation room in the City of Water. She decided to spend some money to ask. Ning Shu sat down. The silver-haired man lifted the curtain. When he saw Ning Shu, he only raised his eyelids and asked, "What do you want to ask this time?" Ning Shu said, "There's a problem with my peerless martial art. To be exact, there's a problem with the law of nothingness. It's cold and hot one moment. It's like a lunatic. What's the reason? I can't even enter the world now. The silver-haired man said, all kinds of situations will occur when the world evolves. Moreover, the evolution of the world is uncontrollable. As for what happens, it should be normal. Is there no way to interfere? Ning Shu asked. The silver-haired man said indifferently, do you have the ability to interfere? Ning Shu was speechless. Why did he have to be so direct? Ning Shu said, I don't have the ability. So it's useless to be anxious. Just let the world evolve on its own, the silver-haired man said directly. It's useless even if you're anxious. Chapter 3294. It was useless to be anxious. Anxious but unable to exert any strength, truly powerless. Ning Shu frowned. But the problem is that it's not an ordinary world. It contains the law of nothingness. It was obvious that the peerless martial art was not as powerful as the law of nothingness. It might be devoured. Ning Shu wanted to scratch his head, but he held back. If the silver-haired man said there was no way, then there really was no way. If there was no solution, he could only let the world do whatever it wanted. In this situation, he couldn't even feel at ease doing missions. He couldn't leave the peerless martial art in the system space. It was too dangerous. Who knew what would happen later? At least the nothingness world was big enough. There were no living creatures, but the problem was that he couldn't take the peerless martial art away. Ning Shu asked, how much? 100,000 merit points. The man in the cheongsam said, since you're free, go deal with the star stones later and do what you need to do. Ning Shu was speechless. I'm not in the mood now. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, there was someone to replace him. When the problem of the world was solved, he would do it. Ning Shu gave him 100,000 merit points, which was the price of dealing with the star stones once. The main system was going to earn money personally. Well, it was worth the entrance fee. Ning Shu was about to leave the consultation room when a voice sounded in his mind. Sister, come here. Ning Shu was speechless. Brother? Did she hear Li Wen's voice wrongly? Shouldn't Li Wen be wandering around with the bugs now? The silver-haired man frowned and looked at the roof. Obviously, he sensed that someone had broken into the law space. He disappeared in a flash. Li Wen's voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Come to the void. Ning Shu jumped through space and arrived at the place Li Wen mentioned. She saw her brother standing alone in the void. Ning Shu walked over and asked, brother, why are you here? Passing by. Ning Shu was speechless. Passing by? Didn't you pass by before? Ning Shu frowned. These bugs wouldn't leave empty-handed. Wherever they went, wherever there was a plane or energy, they would go up and gnaw. They were like locusts. Ning Shu asked, is there going to be another big battle? This was too early. It hadn't been that long since the last time. Didn't they say that it would happen once every 3,000 years? It had only been 30 years. Tell me, did you do it on purpose? Did you come here on purpose? Ning Shu asked, why didn't the little mouse come with you? If Li Wen was here, the little mouse must be here as well. They're behind us. I wanted to come here. Ning Shu looked at Li Wen and asked, they're here. Are they going to bite the plane? Li Wen only said, maybe. He probably thinks that he's a tough nut to crack and will only be satisfied if he bites down. Ning Shu. Is it because of the energy body? Probably. Anyway, these insects are used to browsing. It doesn't matter where they go. They can go wherever they want. But it's a little surprising that they turned back. They probably feel unsatisfied, so they came back. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. What's there to be unsatisfied about? You gave so many plane fragments. Anyway, they're going to bite the plane. What's wrong with having a ready-made plane wall now? In addition to the plain wall, there are so many world origins. They're still not satisfied. Millions of world origins. She had done so many tasks, but she didn't find many world origins. The other world origins were all bought and obtained through other means. It was really not an easy task to collect so many world origins. What else could the insects be dissatisfied with? What was the point of turning back now? Ning Shu saw so many world origins and his heart ached. Although they weren't his. It felt like he had given away tons of merit. Although they weren't his, he still felt heartache. His heart ached. Ning Shu asked, "Are they going to fight?" "Maybe." Li Wen said, "By the way, there are many good things in the void. Why do you have to stay here? Go out more." Ning Shu was speechless. Go out, of course, she wanted to go out. The problem was that she was alone. It was too dangerous to go out. The races in the void were all innately strong. It was dangerous to go out. These insects weren't very strong individually, but they were very large in number. Many ants could kill an elephant. She didn't have the qualifications to go out now. Ning Shu thought about whether he should inform the organization now. If these insects came back now, the organization would be caught off guard. "Here, a little snack." Li Wen took out a bag. Inside the plastic gauze net was a kumquat-like fruit. The fruit was red and looked a little like a fairy fruit. Ning Shu took it and asked, "What fruit is this, little tomato?" "No, it grows in the void. I heard that there's a bird called Di Jun that likes to eat this fruit." Di Jun, wasn't it the king of demons, Di Jun? It was probably the same name. Birds like to eat fruits. Ning Shu took one out and ate it. The taste was actually quite good. It was quite sweet, very sweet. Most importantly, there was energy. An unknown energy surged in his body. Ning Shu asked, "Have you eaten it before?" "I've eaten a lot. I'm a little tired of it," Li Wen said. Ning Shu was speechless. It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. If they were going to fight, they had to be prepared in advance. Ning Shu said, "You're out now. The little mouse won't blame you, right?" Li Wen said, "I'm a free person. The little mouse can't control where I go." Ning Shu just shrugged. Although he said that, he felt that the little mouse would definitely be angry. Ning Shu said, "I don't think it's worth it for the little mouse to waste their time in this place." There was no energy in the Sea of Law now, so it was an empty shell. Li Wen looked at Ning Shu and asked, "Why do you say that?" He thought for a moment and said, "Is there a problem with this world?" Ning Shu thought, "Do you have to be so sharp?" Ning Shu just said, "You can go to a world that is not protected by anyone. Why do you have to fight here? What I mean is, there are so many people guarding here. Why does the little mouse have to fight?" Li Wen said, "I'm going back. Let's contact each other if there's anything. By the way, don't stay in this place all the time. Why don't you follow the little mouse?" Ning Shu shook his head and refused. "Forget it. The little mouse doesn't like me. If we don't get along well, then forget it. An outsider would be discriminated against." Li Wen did not face him and left. Ning Shu returned to the system space. There was already a thick layer of ice in the system space. Although there was a fire pearl, it was completely useless. Ning Shu wanted to see what tricks the peerless martial arts could play. Chapter 3295. Ning Shu contacted the main system and said that she had information to sell to the organization. It was a top-secret organization. The organization sold her information for money, so she had to take some money. After a while, the silver-haired man sent a message to Ning Shu, "Come to the consultation room." Ning Shu rushed to the consultation room and walked in. The silver-haired man was already waiting for her. It was rare for the silver-haired man to be waiting for her. The silver-haired man went straight to the point. What's the news? Ning Shu, my information is very valuable. The silver-haired man, business is business. If your information is really valuable, I will pay you. Ning Shu told the silver-haired man the news she got. The silver-haired man heard the news and frowned. Are you sure about this? Ning Shu said, I just got the news from someone I know. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's good to be prepared in advance. The silver-haired man nodded, I know. I will send someone to investigate and verify the authenticity of the news. Ning Shu coughed and asked, then what about my reward? I rushed over here as soon as I heard the news. I'm only thinking about the organization. The silver-haired man said, I will give you 100,000 merit points later. 100,000 merit points. Wasn't that the money she gave when she asked questions? Now she got it back. They were exchanging information like this, so no one lost anything. The man in the Cheongsam asked, you know someone from Buggy? Ning Shu. Can't I know someone? This was strange. During the negotiation, Li Wen had said this to her. The silver-haired man pondered for a while, is it that human? Ning Shu shook her head, no. Anyway, you don't have to know how I got the news. Anyway, the buggy is moving in this direction. It's best if they don't come. Her brother brought her snacks. Of course, he wouldn't tell her that it was Li Wen who gave the news. The silver-haired man did not delve into how Ning Shu got the news and said that he would give the merit to her. The silver-haired man left after he finished speaking. It was obvious that he had something to do. The silver-haired man left, but Ning Shu did not know where to go. Would he be frozen in the system space? It was impossible for him to complete the quest in his current state. It was even more impossible for him to deal with the star rocks. Once he dealt with them, he would not be able to leave halfway. Could it be that they were just going to wait? The system was keeping watch in the system space. If something really happened, the system would inform her immediately. That was to cause the system to freeze. Ning Shu no longer felt burdened and went to look for the Cheongsam man. Since he had nowhere else to go, he decided to continue looking for treasures in the void. There were so many empty worlds waiting for her to explore. There were still many treasures in the void, but the void was too dangerous. Void was the 18 levels of hell. Previously, he had been too arrogant and narrow-minded. However, after going out for a stroll, he had a rough idea of what was going on. Then he decided not to go, not for the time being. He would wait until he was strong enough to explore the Sea of Stars. As soon as Ning Shu entered the restaurant, the waiter went upstairs to look for the Cheongsam man. She came here often and even knew the waiter. The Cheongsam man came down with a smile on his face. He was obviously satisfied with the changes in the Tree of World. Now, the Tree of World was full of vitality. Even the soul was full of vitality. After all, the Tree of World grew in the soul. The Cheongsam man sat down, poured himself a cup of tea, took a sip, and asked, "What's the matter? Let's explore the void again and find something good." Ning Shu looked excited. "Why don't we go to the void? Team up to find something good in the void." But it was also dangerous. The Cheongsam man was speechless. "Are you talking nonsense? Go to the void. What if you get lost in the void?" The Cheongsam man knew that other than this organization, there were many unknown things in the void. The most important thing was that the void was boundless. It was too big. No one knew how big the void was. There was no path. What if they got lost? Also, the Cheongsam man didn't think he had the strength to jump around blindly in the void. Ning Shu said, "Okay, then let's go to the void world. It's safer there." The void world was a physical world, after all, and it could be stepped on. But the void world was different. The Cheongsam man nodded. Okay, are we going or looking for others? Forget it, just the two of us. There won't be enough people. Ning Shu said. You're thinking about splitting up when you haven't found anything. The Cheongsam man said, it's good if we found it, but it's a waste of time if we didn't find it. It's not good to have fewer people. If there's any danger, we'll just leave and find more people next time. Ning Shu didn't have any objections. Anyway, it didn't make a difference to her whether there were more or less people. She found the Cheongsam man because the Cheongsam man knew about treasures and what they needed. The Cheongsam man had information from the sect. She brought the Cheongsam man with her, so she would definitely be able to get some information from the sect. It was a win-win situation. Everyone would improve together. Ning Shu said, this time, we're looking for. Before Ning Shu could finish, the system told Ning Shu in a trembling voice, the main system wants you to gather in the void. It says there's a mission. Ning Shu said, how can I leave in my current situation? The ultimate martial art was so weird. Also, why are you trembling? Ning Shu couldn't help but ask. What was it that made the system tremble? The system said. It's cold. Ning Shu was speechless. I have fire orbs, why don't you ask me for them? He had a few fire orbs. These things could resist the cold. Although there was a wall between them, cold was a kind of energy that walls couldn't block. The system didn't say anything. Ning Shu said, you have to tell me what you want. If you don't tell me, how would I know? If you don't tell me, how would I know what you want? What was the use of being reserved? The system said. Thank you. Ning Shu said to the Cheongsam man, I've just received a last-minute notice. There's a mission, so I can't go with you. The Cheongsam man said nonchalantly, it's fine. Go do your thing. Ning Shu thought for a while and said to the Cheongsam man, have you understood the rules? The rules are above the rules. The Cheongsam man shook his head. Not at the moment. I heard that the rules aren't easy to understand. Ning Shu said, you should hurry up and understand the rules. One has already understood the rules. One was already picking up the shards now, although the bosses weren't willing to do it. However, not everyone could do it. It represented strength, a symbol of status. The Cheongsam man squinted his eyes. One has already understood the rules. How do you know? Ning Shu said, because we bumped into her. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.